Unexplained Rundown is pleased to partner with tpublic.com and bring you some fun and fantastical apparel and accessories that are truly out of this world. If you're keen to support the show and see it grow, be sure to check out some of the cool designs in the merch store and grab yourself a bargain. Use the link in the description below.
Or concern you about the unknown and the unidentified flying object?
Oh, yes, we discussed it at every conference that we had with the military, and they never were able to make me a concrete report on.
Do you have anything on the subject, sir?
No, I haven't had anything on the subject, and there's always things like that going on. The flying saucers, and they've had other things, you know.
For years, the world has seen reality distorted, facts manipulated, and truth hidden. But there's even more to the story than anyone has ever suspected. Because no one has been able to see the whole picture. Until now.
Friends, g'day and welcome back to another episode of the Unexplained Rundown. This Friday the 13th episode of the Unexplained Rundown. So I'm looking forward to... Sorry, I thought I heard something there for a sec. Yeah, welcome, guys. My name's Grant Lavac. If you're new to the channel, if you're like me, you're intrigued by the unexplained mysteries of this mortal coil of ours, and you crave to know what's real and what's not. Thank you for joining wherever you are around the globe. We do have some friends already with us, so just a quick shout out to a few folks that are here. Jimmy, my friend, it's always good to see you. So thanks for joining on your Friday the 13th eve in cold Melbourne, Australia. Jasmine Sharrock, great to see you as always, my friend. Mark Kyle is here as well. Thank you for joining. We've got a few others. Gary Voorhees Jr., great to see you, my friend. I believe first time viewer. So thanks for joining on X. Hope you're keeping well. Zane Michael. Jimmy says hi to Zane. Zane Michael is here as well. Thanks for joining. And I know you've got to jump. You've got to bump early, Zane. So no problemo whatsoever. We've got a fun show, folks. Got quite a bit of content to cover off on. What I thought we would cover off on, and we've got another one too. Hoodwink, the Ranger. Welcome. I haven't seen too many people talk about, will David Grusch, now that there is a new AARO Director appointed and in place, will David Grusch now sit down with this new AARO Director and reveal what he does? Because we know there has been a lot of back and forth, a lot of reticence on the part of David Grusch to sit down with AARO, namely Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick. And we're going to get into all of that this evening. So we'll cover some history there. If you're not familiar with what that he said, she said, bad blood between Grusch and Kirkpatrick, we're going to bring you up to speed and cover off on it. So we've got Rotary Motion joining from X. Great to see you. We have Zeta Retcat. Good to see you as well. And yes, we're starting to see some cat memes out on social media following Sarah Gam's coming out appearance on the Good Trouble show. So that was a really interesting episode, and we'll talk about that a bit tonight. So just a couple of things wanted to touch on before we start off on. If you want to support the show, as always, consider giving it a like, share, subscribe. We've got a couple of YouTube memberships you can join. You can consider joining for a couple of gold coins a month. There's a Patreon membership as well. Links in the show notes below. Quick shout out to our good friends and Patreon members, Jimmy, as always, Jasmine, who else? We've also got a new Patreon member. Shout out to Shane Woods, who's maybe joining us at some point. We've got Clint Feidler as well, and YouTube member Telekinetic. So for those that have already joined, and supporting the channel, Patreon and YouTube. Many, many thanks for your support. And for those that are interested, you can explore some of the membership options in the links in the show notes below. We've got a poll in tonight's show as well, folks. So if you're interested to weigh in, feel free. The poll is, will David Grusch meet with the new AARO Director? And the choice options are, Grusch should and would if he could. Another option, dude, it's AARO. Grusch ain't in no rush, and no way, no how. So we've got a couple options that you can select from in the YouTube poll. If you want to contribute, you certainly can. Ryan Sprague, good to see you, my friend. Hello from probably cold and dark morning over there in Scotland. Great to see you. Or it's probably 11 o'clock actually. So I hope your day isn't dark and blistering cold. It's great to see you as always, my friend. So thank you for joining. So let's get into it, folks. So we're going to start things off with a couple of slides. Got a slide deck as always. And actually, before we do, Ryan chimes in. Grant, there is a confirmed Senate UFO hearing happening by the end of the month. Do you think Kosloski will be present and or be speaking? Very, very interesting question, and we're going to address that specifically in this show. So let's, on that note, get into it. So if you've been living under a rock as of late, you may be interested to learn that there is indeed a new AARO Director. On the 27th of August, AARO pushed out on its social media channel. It seems to be posting up more frequently these days, so no more cobwebs on their X channel. Today, Dr. Jon Kosloski arrived as AARO's new director. Read more about him and the announcement here. So if we have a look at AARO's website, you'll see this on aaro.mil as well. Let me just pull this up for you so you can see. So if one of their lead banners is, unless they've taken, there he is. New AARO Director, Dr. Jon Kosloski. So if you click on that link at AARO's website or on AARO's social media channel on X, you'll be taken to a Department of Defense announcement. And this was from, again, the 26th of August. Immediate release, Department of Defense announces the new director, All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office. I'll just read through it very quickly. Today, Dr. Jon T. Kosloski arrived on detail from the National Security Agency, the NSA. No such agency to be appointed as the director of the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office. Dr. Kosloski brings extensive experience working in multiple scientific fields, including quantum optics and crypto mathematics, above my pay grade, as well as leading mission-oriented research and analysis teams. Jon possesses the unique set of scientific and technical skills, policy knowledge, and proven leadership experience required to enhance AARO's efforts to research and explain unidentified anomalous phenomena to the Department, Congress, and the American people, said Deputy Secretary of Defense Kathleen Hicks. As the AARO Director, Dr. Kosloski will head DoD's efforts in coordinating with the intelligence community to minimize technical and intelligence surprise by synchronizing scientific intelligence and operational direction, identification, attribution, and mitigation of unidentified anomalous phenomena, as we all know, UAP, in the vicinity of national security areas. Under his leadership, AARO will continue to examine the U.S. government historical record relating to UAP, as well as efforts to declassify and release UAP-related records to the greater extent possible. Well, hopefully we get some more cases that are declassified from AARO, because there's not many on their website at the moment. So won't read Dr. Jon Kosloski's entire biography, but it is linked on AARO's website. If you want to see who the man is, this is the guy. It looks like a relatively young fella. And it's essentially, we'll just maybe read that last paragraph. Dr. Kosloski received bachelor's degrees in mathematics and physics from California State University, San Bernardino, and a PhD in electrical engineering from Johns Hopkins University. The focus of his doctoral research was the invention of novel devices that leverage principles from quantum optics to receive very weak phase-encoded signals. After completing the theoretical analysis of 2 new optical receiver designs, Dr. Kosloski worked with scientists from the National Institute of Standards and Technology to demonstrate the abilities of his designs to achieve record sensitivities. Dr. Kosloski is also a graduate from NSA's crypto analysis program. So he certainly sounds like an incredibly intelligent fellow. He's certainly got quite a few skill sets and areas of expertise up his sleeve. So let's wind the clock back a little bit, because we are going to talk about Kosloski in tonight's episode, and I'll just make sure I've got my slide deck all ready to go so we can pull that up when it is ready. So give me 1 second, folks, and I'll make sure that is all prepped. There we go. There we go. So we're going to talk about Jon Kosloski in tonight's show. But before we do, for those of you that maybe aren't as well versed on the topic as others, or you're not really sure what's this Grusch and Kirkpatrick beef that there was back in the day, well, let me wind the clock for you a little bit, and I'll take you back to the 26th of July of last year, 2023, where we know before the House Oversight Committee, David Grusch testified before Congress, and this is how he introduced himself to at the start of the congressional hearing.
Grusch. I was an intelligence officer for 14 years, both in the U.S. Air Force, both active duty Air National Guard and Reserve at the rank of major, and most recently from 2021 to 2023, at the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, NGA, at the GS-15 civilian level, which is the military equivalent of a full bird colonel. I was my agency's co-lead in unidentified anomalous phenomena and transmedium object analysis, as well as reporting to the UAP task force, UAPTF, and eventually, once it was established, the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, AARO.
So NGA lead, co-lead to
19th of April, Dr. Kirkpatrick.
For his agency and reporting to the UAPTF. So that's important. So let's we'll remember that as we go through. Throughout the hearing, questions were asked of David Grusch by many Congressmen and women, but one that is a bit of a firecracker when it comes to questions on UAP is Anna Paulina Luna, and this is the question that she asked of one of the questions she asked of David Grusch.
Okay, on the 19th of April, Dr. Kirkpatrick, head of AARO, had said that he did not find any evidence of UAPs. You also stated that you had, in your interview, that you had briefed him on information that you were uncovering, but that he did not follow up with you. Were the items that you divulged to him pertinent to national security?
Yes, him and I had a classified conversation in April 2022 before he took over AARO in July 2022, and I provided him some concerns I had.
Do you know why he might not have followed up with you?
Unfortunately, I cannot read his mind. I wish he did. I was happy to give sage counsel to him on where to look when he took the helm of AARO.
So before Kirkpatrick even took office in July of 2022, Grusch had met with Kirkpatrick in a classified setting, giving him a heads up, obviously, of things to look for and questions to ask. And as you saw in that clip there, that Grusch then indicated that Kirkpatrick really never followed up with him. That then started a furor of back and forth, some very public spats between David Grusch's camp and Kirkpatrick. And many of you will remember that Kirkpatrick, the following day after that hearing, he went on a bit of a tirade and he posted on his LinkedIn page. And I'll pull this up for you so you can see. Make sure we've got it on screen. Here we go. So I won't read through Kirkpatrick's entire tirade, but he titles it Hearings and Transparency. As the director of AARO's amazingly talented, devoted and highly motivated team, however, I cannot let yesterday's hearing pass without sharing how insulting it was to the officers of the Department of Defense and intelligence community who chose to join AARO, many with not unreasonable anxieties about the career risks this would entail, that have been working diligently, tirelessly, and often in the face of harassment and animosity to satisfy their congressional mandated mission. They are truth seekers, as am I, but you certainly would not get that impression from yesterday's hearing. The next highlight, yet contrary to assertions made in the hearing, the central source of those allegations, again, the allegations that David Grusch has made and was making during that congressional hearing, source of those allegations has refused to speak with AARO. AARO has the authorities and resources necessary to execute this mission to meet congressional intent. And as we've stated before, AARO welcomes anyone with knowledge of any of these allegations. We're talking about crash retrieval programs and reverse engineering programs. Allegations of these allegations or programs to talk to us in a safe, secure, and appropriately cleared environment, which we would assume to mean a SCIF. Rest assured, AARO will follow the data wherever it leads. None of the whistleblowers from yesterday's hearing ever worked for AARO. Now, Grusch may have misspoke in that he wasn't really reporting to AARO in his capacity. None of the whistleblowers from yesterday's hearing ever worked for AARO. Grusch was obviously providing information to AARO, though, based on his work at the NGA for AARO, or was ever a representative to AARO, contrary to statements made in testimony and in the media. So some pretty harsh words there from Kirkpatrick as a rebuttal to a lot of the comments that Grusch had made, and along with statements that the congressmen and women had made during that hearing. So let's fast forward the clock. That was the 27th of July of last year when Kirkpatrick posted that message on his LinkedIn. Fast forward to 18th of April of this year, and our good friend John Greenwald Jr. over at the Black Vault received some very interesting communications through FOIA that revealed AARO's authorized and repeated attempts to engage with David Grusch. Now, I've linked this article in the show notes below if you want to read through it. You can. John Greenwald did a really extensive breakdown of these signal communications that he received through FOIA. So if you want to watch that video, if you haven't had a chance to do so previously, feel free. It's linked in the description below. So let's actually have a look at specifically the documents, the communications that John Greenwald Jr. was able to secure for release through FOIA. So let's jump straight into the documents, and I'll pull this up so everyone can see it on screen. And this is the one. So these documents can be accessed via that article as well. So let's start with, I want to go straight down. This is an exchange, or actually some executive summary notes from AARO, a memorandum for record from the 8th of January this year, basically summarizing its attempts, repeated attempts to get David Grusch to sit down with AARO and get him to sit down with Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick. Again, I won't read through all of the bullet points because you can read this document at your leisure. I've just kind of highlighted a couple that may be of relevance for what we're discussing in this episode. So AARO provided Mr. Grusch with a memorandum from the Director of Special Access Programs, Department of Defense, that made it clear AARO is authorized to receive compartmented information, and it's enclosed in this document, and we'll review it shortly. Mr. Grusch was also told that AARO would obtain a similar memorandum from the Director Controlled Access Programs Office, CAPCO Office of the Director of National Intelligence. Mr. Grusch failed to show at the agreed upon location and time for an interview with AARO. Upon contacting Mr. Grusch, he stated that he is not convinced that AARO is authorized to receive varying levels of classified and sensitive information. In accordance with the James M. Inhue National Defense Authorization Act for fiscal year 23, AARO is authorized to receive any information related to UAP, regardless of classification and notwithstanding any non-disclosure agreement you may have signed. Again, Mr. Grusch cited various security concerns that AARO is authorized to receive information, concerns that AARO is authorized to receive information of any classification level regarding UAP. AARO provided Mr. Grusch with a memorandum from the Director, Controlled Access Programs Office of the Director of National Intelligence that states that AARO is authorized to receive information which is subject to a US government non-disclosure agreement. AARO is authorized to receive all levels of information related to UAP. So that was basically AARO saying, look, we've got all the clearances we need. We've got all the access. Grusch should come in and sit down with us. We've tried to get him in repeatedly. And there was this very public he said, she said back and forth. Grusch saying, no, I didn't receive a communication by this date, which wasn't actually, in fact, inaccurate. But there was this whole bit of a baby tantrum back and forth between the two of them. Kind of really highlights that, they probably they're not the biggest fans of one another, and they may well and truly have had some bad blood historically. So that was AARO's position. Let's have a look at, I'll come down the document, and this is a comprehensive signal exchange between Christopher Mellon and Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick, along with, I believe, a couple of others. You're going back and forth. Christopher Mellon doing his best to try and get David Grusch to sit down with AARO, but expressing to Kirkpatrick David Grusch's concerns that David Grusch's lawyer had, and there were some assurances that David Grusch wanted from AARO before he would sit down with them. So again, I'm not going to read through this lengthy exchange. It is a very interesting exchange. I've just called out one specifically on screen. Let me see if I can zoom on in, because I'm blind as a badger and I can't see it. So this is essentially again, a message from Kirkpatrick, I believe, reiterating AARO's position. This is the official position of the Pentagon, released to media Tuesday, approved by OGC and the Secretary. By law, AARO may receive all UAP-related information, including any classified national security information involving military, intelligence, and intelligence-related activities at all levels of classification regarding of any restrictive access controls, special access programs, or compartmented access programs. Moreover, there is no restriction to AARO receiving any past or present UAP-related supposedly information. Unfortunately, the rest of that message is cut off. It wasn't expanded for them to read more, so we can't see what else was said in that message. So then we go through, again, the documents that John Greenwald Jr. was able to secure for release through FOIA, and we get, obviously, a DM exchange. There is some commentary clearly indicating that there is some bad blood between Kirkpatrick and Grusch. Yeah, but let me ask him first. He, being Grusch, has bad blood with Sean going back to 2015. Now, I don't know what that bad blood is, and I'd be interested to learn what it is, and what if that is the primary driver behind Grusch not wanting to sit down with AARO, and obviously the fact that there was a lot of distrust in AARO, and I think a lot of people would agree that they're happy to see Kirkpatrick out of the job and have someone new at the helm. So again, clearly some issues that David Grusch had with Kirkpatrick and potentially Kirkpatrick had with David Grusch. So let's now move down the document a little bit further. That exchange, the signal messages was on the 13th of June. The DM indicating the bad blood was on the 26th of June. And in this same FOIA document, if we scroll on down, I'll just go to, let's say I'll start at page, this is the page I want to start from. Email dating back to, actually, no, we're going to go even a bit further. We'll start, there we go. This is the one I wanted to start on. So this is an email exchange, again, in that same month, but earlier in the month. This is an email to Sean Kirkpatrick. And I'll read again just the highlights so you can kind of get a sense as to the concerns that Grusch had with AARO, his belief that they weren't authorized to hear his classified testimony. This is an email to Sean on the subject of Dave Grusch. Sean, Grusch confirmed to me, we don't know who this person is, that he does not intend to avail himself of the AARO's safe harbor process to tell you, again, he would have been sitting down with just Kirkpatrick, or maybe others, but primarily Kirkpatrick, to tell you what he spent many hours telling the DOD IG, the ICIG, and the two intelligence committees about UAP. He has reported through the media in recent days that he was not able to share some of the information he has with the two intelligence committees because they lacked the program accesses. So David Grusch wasn't able to reveal everything he knew that was classified to the intelligence committees because they didn't have the appropriate access. So the intelligence committees didn't have the whole picture. What this means is that the DOD ICIGs know something, because we know that David Grusch submitted formal complaints to the DOD IG and the ICIG. The DOD/ICIGs know something from Grusch that Congress as a whole is not aware of, namely those intelligence committees. That is a reason for you to go to the IGs and ask for access to Grusch's complaint, so they could see what information had been provided to the IGs that may assist AARO with its investigatory efforts. Ask for access as they deem appropriate for you to what Grusch is reporting. If waived programs are involved, they would need to be a way for you to convey this to our staff directors. But there is also just a basic reason for you to try and get all the information that Grusch has provided to the IGs. So sounds like Grusch had provided a lot more comprehensive information to the DOD and ICIGs than he was able to do in closed session to the intelligence committees. So that was the 7th of June. We come up to same day. The best Sean will get from them, being the IGs, is a filtered report that the IG releases to everyone. Best course of action is for Mr. Grusch to speak to AARO per their confidential processes, the one Congress directed in law. If he doesn't, I fear the best assessment you, being Kirkpatrick, will ever get from AARO is a reflection of a reflection. So nothing new, what he had shared in the intelligence committees and to the IGs. FYI, Sean won't have an access problem, i.e. that is, he has no SAP cap restrictions, it's just the IG divide. Of course, if he did speak to the Intel committees, they could always provide their transcripts, notes to Sean for his review. So this is a worst case scenario. If they can't get Grusch at all, they can go after this information, or that's what they're hoping to do. Now we have an email again, same sort of time frame, same day. I did speak with the DOD IG. They went on my behalf to the ICIG to request the classified transcript. Why? Because Grusch gave nothing to the DOD IG and claimed the same thing he told you, that it was IC compartment information and they couldn't have it. As DK points out, the SSCI, that's the Senate Select Committee for Intelligence, could give me the transcript. So they're kind of getting, frustrated that they're not getting anything or potentially not going to get anything. Sean, press reports indicate that he said he could not provide everything he knows to the intelligence committees because they were not cleared. So I concluded that he had access to some DoD SAP that the intel committees are not access to, and inferred that the ICIG would not have access either. So if there's information David Grusch didn't tell the DoD IG and ICIG, can AARO get that information from Dave Grusch? This is an email from Kirkpatrick. I know everything he was briefed to and had access to, and have far greater access. So this constant reiteration from Kirkpatrick and AARO that we've got all the clearances we need to hear classified testimony from Grusch. He just needs to come in. So let's now, and that is, what page are we up to there? I just want to make sure we'll come up to one more page. This is the last exchange. The next day, I've been told by the IG the UAP-related investigation has been closed for a year. He is free to tell us, and you're free to ask. There is no excuse for not providing an authorized disclosure. And I kind of, to a degree, agree with the arguments that are being made there. If the intelligence committees didn't have the clearances, if the IGs didn't have the clearances to hear everything, and AARO is, really reiterating that it does. Now we'll get into do they or don't they. If they did, then Grusch really should have sat down with them and shared what he knows, all of the information he knows in a classified session, so that AARO can do its work. So let's now have a look at that same bunch of documents. And there are some questions that people have popped in, so I'm going to address those. This is now fast forward to November 13th of last year. So they've been trying for a couple of months, obviously, to try and get him to sit down with them after he testified before the House Oversight Committee. Mr. Grusch, the MFR, Memorandum for Record, from SAPCO that makes it clear that AARO can receive compartmented information from interviewees. See you at 10 a.m. So obviously it got to the point where Grusch was prepared to sit down with them. Meeting was scheduled. They had provided some documentation that AARO believed it made its case that it had the clearances it needed to receive compartmented information. So that meeting was scheduled. Now it was the 13th, so you can presume they were going to meet on the next day, the 14th. Now, before that meeting took place, same day, Grusch responds. And again, I'm just reading the highlights, which is the key information. This is from Grusch. The key issue here is that many of these activities have conventional classified and compartmented security classification guides that also cover non-UAP activities as well. To discuss the UAP-related activities would also expose these conventional SAP mission areas. An oral history interview subject must also be absolved of this obligation to protect this information as well. Some of it may be bigoted or waived, and then he cites a USC code. Furthermore, as discussed Friday, I am seeking an ODNI cap code determination to absolve an oral history interview subject of any NDAs relating to UAP-related and adjacent, as stated above, IC cap information. Additionally, in my particular case, in order to horizontally protect a portion of my oral history testimony previously provided to ICIG and the intelligence committees, we would need to conduct the interview at the HCS operations restricted handling level, which I imagine is a very high-level SCIF of some sort. Has the CIA Office of Security or Directorate of Operations provided a memo in this regard for oral history interview subjects? Has the OS provided a memo to also cover managed need to know projects not directly reported to ODNI CAPCO? Lastly, what signed policy does AARO have to receive non-Title 10 SAPs, that is DOE, Department of Energy, and NSC, National Security Council? Has the EOP NSC Security Director National Program Management Staff, DOA SAPCO, SAPOC, provided a memo similar to the DOD SAPCO memo you provided? A lot of that is right over my head. I don't understand it, but it sounds like Grusch had some genuine concerns on his side. And I find it very interesting that he references CIA and DOE in that exchange. So he is obviously wanting something a little bit more concrete from AARO above and beyond basic an MFR from SAPCO and CAPCO saying that yes, AARO has the authorizations and clearances come on in. So there's clearly some very specific information Grusch is wanting, or some specific reassurances that Grusch is wanting. Let's now, and I think that was the last. Here we go. It goes on. The law is Mr. Grusch. Now, I don't know if this is from Kirkpatrick or someone else. Mr. Grusch, the law is clear in that we can receive information at all classification levels. Very kind of Goff response there. Really doesn't even bother to address the specific concerns that Grusch laid out in his email. So I can understand why Grusch probably didn't want to have that meeting on the 14th of November if his concerns aren't even going to be addressed. Let's now... Actually, I just want to make sure we might as well, and we'll read this one. This is from Grusch. With due respect, and this is to my point, I will need answers to my questions before I will be comfortable meeting. Please provide responses so that we can hopefully move forward and schedule a meeting. The law may grant your office need to know, but does not establish policies and procedures with various data owners. I have managed multi-compartmented activities throughout my entire career and have multiple DCSA security professional certifications. I did not ask these questions for mere curiosity. So he's laying down the gavel there and saying, come on, guys, I'm going to need these assurances from you if I'm going to sit down with you. Mr. Grusch, we've received your email. We will get back to you shortly. Again, kind of continues. This is now over the course of a week. Mr. Grusch, AARO is authorized to receive any information related to UAP, regardless of classification and notwithstanding any non-disclosure agreement you may have signed. We would be glad to meet with you in a skiff so that you could share information with us. And I think, again, this is now coming forward to January the 8th. Again, I want to iterate, this is to Mr. Grusch. I want to reiterate that in accordance with the James M. Inouye National Defense Authorization Act for fiscal year 2023, AARO is authorized to receive any information related to UAP regardless of classification and notwithstanding any non-disclosure agreement you may have signed. And this is from Grusch. This is after several months of going back and forth. Grusch, poor old Grusch, just trying to get some reassurances to his specific concerns. Thank you, will review. Please address my specific concerns that I sent via email on 19 November. Back and forth, stalemate. So you can kind of feel the frustration, that must have been sifting on both sides of Grusch and AARO. They just weren't able to come to an accord. So where does that bring us to? Well, let's have a look at what did AARO provide Grusch specifically. This is, now I'm not going to read through these. This is a memorandum for record dated the 8th of March 23. So quite some time, even prior to Grusch's testimony before the House Oversight Committee. Representatives of the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office are authorized to speak to persons and or conduct interviews of persons that currently have or previously had access to sensitive U.S. government information activities and or materials. Individuals with current or previous access to unidentified aerial phenomena related information, which is subject to a USG non-disclosure agreement, are authorized to provide this otherwise protected information to AARO representatives. AARO personnel are authorized to receive this information pursuant to Section 1673 of the NDAA for fiscal year 23. If the individual providing the information indicates that he/she believes the information to be shared is classified, top secret, special access required, the AARO representatives will handle the information in accordance with such a level at intake and until the classification can be determined. That was from the SAPCO in March of 2023. The CAPCO in 2023 provided exactly the same wording. So again, it's a very generic, very vanilla generic documentation that was, created in 2023, and that's all they're giving to Grusch. They're not even bothering to address his specific concerns, which I think is, it's a shame that AARO didn't kind of go above and beyond. I mean, Grusch is really the star witness, if you think of it. And they weren't even prepared to give a bespoke response to Grusch that specifically addresses his concerns. Why? That's a good question. And I think that would be an interesting one for maybe senators to ask of Dr. Jon Kosloski. So let's now have a look at something else that was put out in defense of David Grusch's concerns, and that was an article from Christopher Mellon. Following the release of that signal exchange that you saw briefly, we only read a little bit of it, between Christopher Mellon and Jon Kirkpatrick. Christopher Mellon and his son, Hunter Mellon, put out an article on their Substack blog on the 22nd of April. Recently, as a result of a FOIA request, the Department of Defense released some signal exchanges I had with Dr. Jon Kirkpatrick, former director of the AARO. The release surprised but did not offend me, as I'm a strong supporter of government transparency. However, it also reminded me of another single message that the public might find of interest that is also pertinent to the alleged recovery of off-world technology. Now, we're not going to talk about that for today, but the last paragraph is really what I wanted to flag for you, because I wanted to share this, being this Substack article, with the public simply to help others better understand the kind of information that has caused some of us to take allegations of recovered off-world material seriously. What would anyone think who received a message like this? Further, this is talking about the signal exchange. Further, this is only one of a number of sources, four of whom I successfully introduced to AARO. However, this individual, as well as another very compelling witness, still refused to meet with AARO because they do not trust the process. They might, however, be willing to speak with a small group of members of Congress behind closed doors. I will continue to explore that possibility. So really, after all of this had happened back and forth, between AARO and Grusch, you can kind of start to see the bubbling of distrust pop up from the likes of Mellon, Luis Elizondo. We're going to talk about that in a while. And obviously many, many folks on social media in the general public. So let's now have a look at some of the more recent. Now, let me just make sure I've got the right thing up on screen here. So let's have a look at some clips that kind of will help put this into perspective as we talk about leading into will David Grusch meet with the new AARO Director, Dr. Jon Kosloski. So this was from everyone's favorite villain, those that love to hate Stephen Greenstreet. His first part one of his interview with Dr. Jon Kirkpatrick. Kirkpatrick sat down with Greenstreet and basically reiterated what we have heard, from AARO repeatedly, that it has all of the clearances that it needs. It has all the authorizations and access. So this was, and if you haven't watched this interview, if you're interested to watch it, the link is in the description below.
The AARO report, did you have access to everything you needed, including classified programs and top secret information?
Absolutely, yes.
Were you ever denied access to anything while preparing this report?
No.
Did you have Title 10 and Title 50 authorities?
Yes.
Now you can see how smug Kirkpatrick is there in his responses. Clearly doesn't want to be doing that interview. Clearly doesn't want to be talking about this after he's retired. So he stated for the record in that interview, and I believe he stated time and time again, that AARO had Title 10 and Title 50 authorities. Now, I'm no expert when it comes to what those are, so I kind of printed myself off a couple of notes. Title 10 authority allows AARO to engage with military-related data, operations, and personnel concerning unidentified aerial phenomena within the scope of national defense. Whereas Title 50 authority the need for access to intelligence that might be classified under covert operations or sensitive intelligence activities. And Title 50 is the one that a lot of folks have had suspicions that AARO has not secured. Because we know in April of 2023, Kirkpatrick said he had Title 10, but he was, Senator Gillibrand was prepared to write a letter to assist AARO get Title 50. Did it get Title 50? When did it get Title 50? There seems to be no confirmation ever provided from AARO as to a specific date that it secured Title 50 authority. And that may be a concern to some folks. So then we had that premiered from Stephen Greenstreet on the 9th of May of this year. And only recently you had, just pull this up for you. You had contributor for the Hill, Marik von Rennenkampff, had Sean Kirkpatrick on his YouTube channel. This is after Kirkpatrick said to Greenstreet, I'm not doing any more interviews. I'm done. I don't want to talk about the topic. And then, not long after that interview, he sits down with Marik. So this is what Kirkpatrick talked to Marik about, specifically pertaining to Grusch's ICIG complaint that he submitted. Because you remember in that email exchange, you can see AARO is saying, well, if Grusch is not prepared to meet with us, we've got to try and get either a transcript from the intelligence committees to see what Grusch told them, or if we can try and get information from the ICIGs pertaining to the UAP-related information in his complaint. And this is the exchange, or this is Kirkpatrick's comments in that sit-down with Marik von Rennenkampff.
Gone in to talk to those two ICIG and DODIG, and we had to they couldn't just give me the statement because it's protected under law enforcement whistleblower protections. So we had to go through this long process of getting the relevant data pulled out and separate it from his complaint about wrongful prosecution.
Retaliation. Yeah. Right.
We had to separate the data, if he had any, from that. The data that was provided, we cross-referenced with what we'd already known because we had interviewed most of the people that he had already talked to, and there was nothing new.
So that came as a huge surprise to a lot of folks because AARO was able to receive from the ICIG, sanitized information from his complaint. Obviously, no information pertaining to the complaint, information that would reveal the identity of sources and, personal identifying information of other individuals. But it was obviously able to receive UAP-related information that was included by Grusch in his ICIG complaint. That was really interesting. So I was thinking, well, if AARO's already got this information, it's probably now in Grusch's best interest that he sits down with them and he expounds on what they've already got. So, if AARO is able to meet his demands that, they provide documentation to his satisfaction or his lawyer's satisfaction, that AARO can now hear his classified testimony, knowing that it's got the UAP related data from his ICIG complaint. Was that a possibility? But nothing came about. And what was really interesting is that following some comments that were made by Kirkpatrick, Marik was able to put out a statement from Grusch. This was in June of this year. You heard in that clip that Kirkpatrick said that most of the individuals that Grusch interviewed, AARO had talked to them. Now, that is in direct contrast and conflict with what Grusch said in this statement that he put out through Marik. I'm not aware of any of the 40 primary interview subjects that form the basis of my ICIG whistleblower complaint having gone to AARO to be interviewed. The witness conveyed to me, and this is a quote, the witness conveyed to me a lack of trust in AARO and the command climate. This is obviously from Grusch. Marik is putting this. I am only aware of 3 individuals with mostly secondhand knowledge that were interviewed by AARO that I also spoke with some years back during my research process. Those individuals did produce some interesting leads I followed, but it appears AARO did not have the expertise to distill the information they were given, as it should have provided them access to a large body of foreign intelligence and other US program information I had access to that is not reflected in the AARO Historical Report Volume 1. So there is, again, this massive discrepancy and disparity. Kirkpatrick saying, yeah, we met with most of them. Well, 3 of the 40 witnesses is not most of them. And, you know, if they went to AARO and AARO is not following up on those leads, and we've heard this time and time again, we know that Robert Salas, you know, he's been very vocal on social media that he never received any feedback from AARO following his interview, and he was not satisfied with the memorandum for record that he received. So again, you've got these 2 factions. You've got AARO saying, we've got everything we need to hear your classified testimony. Come and sit with us. We've seen the UAP-related data in your ICIG complaint. We've spoken to the majority of the 40 witnesses you've spoken to. There's nothing to it. Move along, folks. There's nothing to see here, which is in direct contrast with what Grusch has been saying, and many others have been saying, like Mellon and others have been very vocal about AARO's lack of due diligence. So that was from Marik. Let's now, AARO felt the need to, again, this year, 26th of March, to put this out there on their social media. By law, AARO may receive any UAP-related information at all levels of classification, regardless of special access requirements, or whether it originated with DoD, the intelligence community, or any other USG department or agency. Read more on this. And that link just takes you to those 2 SAPCO and CAPCO letters that I had showed you on screen before. So again, AARO is feeling the need that they have to put this out there again, because there is obviously a perceived lack of public trust. Whistleblowers don't want to chat with AARO. We know that Jeremy Corbell's been very vocal in not wanting whistleblowers to go to AARO. Even Ross Coulthart has been very, au fait with, recommending whistleblowers go to AARO because of this perceived lack of trust, and that they're going to actually do their homework. So let's now fast forward to some stuff that we've heard very recently. This was a really wonderful interview that came out only recently on that UFO podcast. Andy did a great job asking Luis Elizondo some questions about, obviously, his book, Imminent, and just some other questions. If you haven't watched that interview, I highly recommend it. Andy and others do a great job asking some really thought-provoking questions, so do check it out. And this is a clip from that interview. And again, I'll just put, obviously, hopefully my friends here won't mind that I share this information, but as always, I just want to put up fair use. We're critiquing the content that we're sharing. So let me play this clip for you briefly.
Best of your knowledge, did Sean Kirkpatrick, when he was with AARO, see any of the material that we have heard long exists? For example, longer versions of the gimbal video.
Yeah, I can't speak on behalf of Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick, but what I can say from an outside observer, he's also the same guy who said he did not attend a certain meeting on Capitol Hill only to have a photograph of him at that very meeting on Capitol Hill, right? Also, when you look at the actual reports that came out, they were wrong. They were inaccurate. He was saying things like, "Oh, we didn't talk to any whistleblowers." Yeah, he did, because I know who they talked to. One of them was me, and I know what I told them for 3 hours. So there's a lot of I think there's a lot of false information. A lot of those reports that they put out early on. I want to give AARO every fair shake possible. I hope this new leadership does the right thing. I'm really rooting for them. I want them to do the right thing. I'm not asking to agree. What I'm asking to do is do their due diligence. In some cases, the old leadership, they went to an office, knocked on the door, and said, "Excuse me, do you have any UFO information?" They said, "No, get out of here." Okay, and then went back home. They did not have the proper access or clearances, despite what anybody might tell you. I know because there's organizations of people that work in these organizations that told me they never came to us, Lou. So, okay, well, then you don't ask, you're not going to get. So there was, a lot of problems. Now, part of it could be that they were a new organization, and there was a lot of pressure on them from Congress. So I do want to, I don't want to just sit there and be the attack dog and, point fingers. They did a lot of dumb things and a lot of things wrong, but I'm sure, a lot of the folks there that are still there did a lot of things right. And I want to give them credit for it. And I'm hoping that those individuals are the continuity for the new leadership. And, maybe they'll do a little better job, a little better due diligence on the reports that they provide. I mean, some of it was just factually wrong. And that report got ripped. This last report got ripped to shreds into ribbons by just about everybody and anybody, to the point that even the director of national intelligence, right, the co-sponsor of AARO, refused to endorse the report. I don't know what to tell you. That's not a good look. When one of your bosses says, I'm not going to endorse this, maybe you should go back and do some more homework.
So you get a sense how Lou feels about Sean Kirkpatrick with AARO. Wants to give AARO under new leadership a chance, a fresh chance, but really no friend of AARO. What I found interesting in that clip is that Lou tells us that he sat down with Kirkpatrick for 3 hours and provided testimony. But in contrast to that, what I find interesting is, it's clear that Lou has some questions as well about AARO's capability ability to receive classified information. Do they have the necessary authorizations? They went and knocked on the doors of some 3-letter agencies. Do you have UFOs? No. Oh, okay. Thanks for coming. So, and Lou just said it in that clip that he spoke with folks that said, no, they didn't even come to us. So what in my mind, I'm thinking, well, if Luis Elizondo decided to testify for 3 hours with AARO, did he have those concerns about AARO prior to testifying? Because, despite those repeated assurances from AARO that we've kind of gone through already, that it had the necessary authorities and clearances to receive and handle all UAP-related information, regardless of its classification. We know David Grusch declined to meet with AARO and share what he knew. And quite in stark contrast to David Grusch's concerns about AARO's confidentiality and classification handling, Lou did decide to meet with AARO and sat down with Kirkpatrick for 3 hours and provided testimony that was presumably classified. So I'm curious to know what satisfied Luis Elizondo's, what satisfied him to such a degree that he then chose to sit down with AARO, when in that clip he's basically publicly stated that AARO did not have the proper access for clearances. Was Lou just trying to do the right thing, and didn't maybe have those same concerns that Grusch did? But Grusch is a GS-15. Luis Elizondo is a GS-15. You would presume that in their investigatory efforts, certainly Lou over the years, if what he says, if what he claims to be true is true, that he's spoken to, some pretty interesting people in a number of different 3-letter agencies. And, has he ever been exposed to a legacy program? Does he have the same concerns? Did he have the same concerns that AARO wasn't going to be able to do its due diligence to follow up on his classified testimony? I just find that an interesting contrast, that Grusch decided not to testify, yet Lou did. And I would be interested to learn why Lou was satisfied to a degree that he felt comfortable to sit down with AARO. Anyway, that, hopefully that might be something that comes up down the road. So let's actually now look at, this came out only today. Actually, not today. This was yesterday, I should say. Another great interview with Luis Elizondo. Vinny Adams from Disclosure Team. Link is in the description below. If you want to watch this in its entirety, do give it a good look. Again, like with Andy, I was really impressed with a lot of the questions, thought-provoking questions that Vinny had asked. We certainly got some good info. I believe I got some good info out of that interview. And this was an exchange that I found particularly interesting in that interview with Luis Elizondo by Vinny. So let me play this for you.
Department of Energy is still part of this equation.
They are. So I will tell you, there was an individual, I don't want to say his name. He was a really good human being. He was a very senior person in the Department of Energy. He was a special agent and was also part of their Inspector General, IG. And he told me about 5 years ago, and it's a shame because he's dead now. And he allegedly died from COVID. I can't say one way or another if that's true, but he was very concerned because he told me he had uncovered the UAP effort out of Department of Energy. Now, I've never talked about this, so let me be careful how I say this. This is not classified. So he revealed to me, he said, "Look, I'm really upset, Lou. They tried to ruin my career over this. DOE has had a long interest in the UAP issue, particularly over some of our facilities. And I'm tired of the cover-up." And he said, "Look, the Department of Energy is trying to actively discredit me. I'm very upset by it," which, by the way, maybe he felt kind of compelled to tell me because I went through a similar experience, right? And Dave Grusch and anybody else who dared to step forward. And he was very concerned. His wife is a medical doctor, and I had a chance to speak to her after his death. It was a shame. He was a really good man, and he wanted to come forward and be one of the whistleblowers. And unfortunately, he passed away in his home. His wife found him there dead, unfortunately. Now, was it COVID? Yeah, could have been. A lot of people died from it. But it's interesting because there's been some recent issues where folks who are tangentially involved with this topic have had to endure some pretty interesting things lately. And so, coincidence? Yeah, could be, probably. I don't want to be paranoid, but that is a true story. And maybe one day his story will be told. I'd love to be able to tell the world a little bit about this guy. He was a really good person.
Interesting. So Lou had never shared that before, that he had contact with a potential whistleblower from the Department of Energy. And we saw that there was reference to DOE in Grusch's email exchange with AARO. So I wonder if David Grusch was also aware of that potential whistleblower at DOE, and if there had been any sharing of information between Lou and Grusch on that potential whistleblower. And why do I say potential sharing of information? Because only today, our good friends Bryce Abel and Ross Coulthart put out a great interview that they did with Lou Elizondo, and I would encourage you to check this out as well if you haven't already watched it. Link is in the description below, because Elizondo talks specifically about the nature of his relationship with David Grusch, and it goes to, I think, that point. Well, if Lou has knowledge of this potential whistleblower that wanted to come out at DOE, did Grusch know about that individual as well? And if so, to what extent? So this was the interview that was premiered today on Need to Know. Again, you can check it out, link in the description, but this is a clip from that interview.
He's a good human being. I trust him implicitly. I talk to him today. We talk all the time. But there are, again, he worked for another agency, another 3-letter agency, which I've never been employed by that agency. We worked together, but he had access and did stuff through that agency that I wasn't privy to. And frankly, in some cases, I probably didn't even have a need to know. And I'm okay with that, right? This is not like, well, I need to know everything because I was part of ATIP. No. This is this is a far more sophisticated and complex topic. So we have to understand that there are aspects of his job that he is going to be part of that, frankly, I have no need to know, and I won't be part of it, and I won't ask him, and he won't tell me.
So obviously, information sharing on what they can. If Lou doesn't have a need to know, though, obviously Grusch isn't going to reveal information that he can't, and vice versa. So, but again, it would be interesting to know if there has been any information shared on that DOE, that potential whistleblower DOE. Now that he's passed away, what does that mean? Did Lou Elizondo share that information with AARO when he sat down with them? Was that a lead that AARO followed up on? I don't know. I don't recall seeing anything pertaining to DOE specifically in AARO's historical report, Volume 1. So just interesting clip that came out of Need to Know earlier today. So do check out that interview if you're interested. Whilst we're on the Lou Elizondo train, another great interview that came out. Well, this is actually before. So Lou Elizondo is scheduled to, I think, have an interview with Matt Ford of the Good Trouble Show, but Matt Ford yesterday had an interview with a gal by the name of Sarah Gam, who worked with David Grusch. We can assume worked with David Grusch at the NGA and was part of the UAP task force. And there was some very, very interesting information that this lady Sarah Gam shared, specifically pertaining to AARO, which when I heard this, it certainly raised my eyebrows a little bit and got me a little concerned, and kind of reinforced what a lot of folks have been fearful of with AARO, and that it's lacking its due diligence. So have a look at this clip from the Good Trouble Show. Again, this is a really interesting conversation. Link is in the description below if you want to have a look.
We would try to share our data and stuff with them. We'd finally get in touch with somebody and they'd say, no, we have our own database. And it was very unfortunate.
So you're saying, so you guys would go to AARO and say, hey, we've got this mountain of evidence or this mountain of data because we've been spending millions of dollars collecting all this stuff, and AARO tells you to take a hike.
Yeah, that's a easy, simple way to put it.
Not unbelievable. That's AARO is one giant flypaper operation. AARO cannot be trusted. Period. The end. Dr. Jon Kirkpatrick or whoever's running it. This doesn't surprise me. But so would this be from repeated attempts of trying to provide AARO information that they would just tell you no? Or was this like a one-time thing?
No, I know a few of us tried a few times, and I know when I really started trying to, I guess, poke the bear to be like, do you want this data? We've worked hard on this. And so when I really poked, it was like, no, we got our own database. So, yeah, I don't know how many times others might have poked or attempted. I know people higher up than me that were at a different agency tried hard as well, but I'm not going to speak for other people.
You can't say what agency that was?
No, because I hope they'll come forward.
Okay, good. I certainly hope so too.
Wow. Well, there, you hear it there that AARO is rejecting information that can be provided by analysts at the NGA. Why the hell would AARO reject an offer like that? If AARO's congressional mandate is to understand the extent and nature of UAP, mitigate the risks associated with UAP. If the NGA has data, or this team that Sarah Gam was part of at the NGA, and even with the UAP task force before it was kind of disbanded, AARO didn't want to even look at their information. I mean, if that's a failure to exercise its due diligence right there, you can then, that kind of just reinforces a lot of the mumblings and groanings that people have had about AARO, and that they're very lackluster. And there is, again, this complete lack of trust that they're going to do their homework and do their due diligence. And unfortunately, that first-hand testimony there from Sarah Gam really reinforces that, which is such a shame. There are some, I just want to acknowledge a couple of people in the chat. Thank you so very much, Gary Voorhees. Looking forward to watching your future podcasts. I know that you've relatively only recently started up a new podcast. So thank you, Gary Voorhees. Much appreciated, my friend. Very, very generous of you. I appreciate your support there. And again, thanks for joining the show. And of course, my good friend Akashi Chris over at Mindfork. Thank you, love, for your generous support. So for those that haven't checked out Mindfork, jump on over to Akashi Chris's channel. She's got some really fun, entertaining content and does some really cool interviews as well. And I had the good fortune of sitting down with Akashi Chris a while back. So if you want to check out that fun conversation, you can feel free. Let me just, I'll come to some other questions and comments that folks had, but what I found interesting as an Australian is in that interview that Matt Ford had with Sarah Gam, there was an Australian-centric question asked, and I was very hopeful that we would get some meat on the bone, and I'll let you look at the clip to make your own decision.
Government share UAP info with USA, especially due to Pine Gap being so secretive and no one knows what's going on out there?
That's a good question, and I don't know that answer. I know the UK has a really good database and really good system. I think they were doing some sort of report or something they were going to put out maybe earlier this year. I lost track of that. I don't know about Australia. I at least never worked with them.
Bummer, no cigar there, bit of a donut. No info that she could share on Pine Gap. And those that know, my fellow Aussies know that Pine Gap is long rumored to be, being a joint US-Australia top secret facility in the smack bang middle of Australia in Alice Springs. Very, very secret facility, long been rumored to, well, more than rumored, to receive UAP data, and that is relayed back to Space Force bases in the US. Are Australian defense personnel exposed to that data, whether it's raw or sanitized? That is a question that I know folks have asked for a very, very long time. So let's now segue into the new guy, Dr. Jon T. Kosloski. So what are some folks that are well known in ufology in the space? What do they think of the new guy? There's a few people that have already put some thoughts out on social media, Gary Nolan being one of them. He's hopeful for the new AARO director, but they certainly have a lot to overcome given their recent past. I would agree with Dr. Gary Nolan on that point. And feel free to, by the way, cast your vote on our poll on YouTube. Will David Grusch meet with the new AARO director, Dr. Jon T. Kosloski? So feel free to cast your vote. There was also some commentary about the new AARO director on a recent episode, the most recent episode of Weaponized with Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp. So let me play this for you so we can get a sense as to what Jeremy and George think of the new guy that's at the helm of AARO.
This week of interest to us and to our listeners for Weaponized is there's a new director of AARO. His name is Dr. Jon T. Kosloski. DOD also says that Sean Kirkpatrick is no longer a consultant to AARO. I might have a hard time believing that he's not going to give more interviews about the topic and dump cold water on it for the rest of his life, but he's not officially part of the program anymore. That's good. Dr. Jon Kosloski, I know we both have reached out to some people we know. What do they think? I've heard good things. I'm sure you have too. I would just caution folks that we heard the same thing about the interim director, right? We were told by somebody we trust really well, this is a good guy. This is Tim Phillips, good guy. Evidence to the contrary, right?
Yeah, it's actually ridiculous. So, I mean, there you have like director of AARO, Tim Phillips, going on some LinkedIn post and just trying to disparage, information that has come forward to him. That's the problem. When we really look at it with AARO, is AARO, just really plainly, is AARO a counterintelligence operation where it's just trying to find out who knows what? Now, I'm not willing to say it at this time, but there is evidence to that fact that AARO is just a counterintelligence operation. It's sad. So I don't know, even if this new director of AARO is a good guy, and he's done a couple things. He's reached out to a couple people that make me think that at least he wants a better PR look at his organization. So I'm encouraged by a couple of the people that he's reached out to, but he might be kind of imprisoned within a mechanism called AARO that has a completely different agenda than what he might think upon taking that job. I don't know. So I'm not holding high hopes. We're not sending any witnesses to AARO. We are, kind of getting around AARO and getting people to other places to provide testimony at this time.
This is going to be one of those proof is in the pudding moments. I mean, show us. We're willing to give him the benefit of the doubt. He doesn't need our approval, obviously, but we're willing to give him the benefit of the doubt. Hope that the people who've told us he's a good guy and good for that job, we hope they're right. We'll have to wait and see.
So no fans of Kirkpatrick and AARO at all, Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp. But again, at least it's promising to see that there is a sliver of optimism from Jeremy and George that maybe this new guy is going to be a breath of fresh air. So I think Jeremy has probably been the most vocal. The one individual that's been most vocal against Kirkpatrick and AARO. Is AARO in a position where it can change the tide and restore some public trust under the leadership of this new guy? That will remain to be seen, and time will hopefully tell. But there are some things that are quite interesting, and building on what Jeremy just said there, that he was quite surprised that Dr. Jon Kosloski had reached out to some people that Jeremy knows. And so that's a good segue into if we
element this week.
Turn that off. Get rid of that. So going back to the interview that Andy McGrillen did over at that UFO podcast with Luis Elizondo. Luis Elizondo made a couple comments that I found were quite interesting about the new AARO guy, Dr. Jon Kosloski. So let me play this clip for you so we can get a sense as to what Lou thinks about the new guy.
AARO still has a chance of giving something positive to the whole UFO disclosure movement.
Sure they do, of course. Look, there's salvation and vindication for everybody, man. I mean, it's never too late, brother. I'm actively rooting for them, man. I heard the new guy happens to be former friends of somebody I know, a colleague that I respect. So I'm very hopeful that this person is going to be able to do the right thing. Some of the investigators that are part of AARO, I personally know from former jobs, former lives. And they're good people. They're damn fine investigators, or at least they were. So, I want AARO to win. I want them to succeed. I also want them to do their job right. And unfortunately, in the past, they've got some making up to do. And again, I don't want to paint AARO with a broad stroke and blame everybody in AARO, because ultimately you have to blame the leader. It falls on the leadership's shoulder for all successes and failures, period. And so if there's a failure, you blame the leadership. Look, if a mission went bad and I was in charge, I took responsibility. I got no problem doing that. Holding yourself accountable is very, very important. I think the track record is very clear. Certain individuals were only there for a very short period of time in certain positions and left. And then, were asked to leave, their other advising capacity as well. So again, I don't want this conversation to devolve into, accusations and pointing fingers at people. I, as a personal human being, I am not attacking Jon Kirkpatrick. In his professional capacity, I think he was very ineffective.
So I think that's a fair comment from Lou, not painting all of AARO with a broad brush, because there's obviously some very good people at AARO that take their job seriously, but that under Kirkpatrick's leadership, it was to AARO's detriment. And you can kind of get a contrast there between Jeremy Corbell's comments. He's not even interested in sending anyone to AARO, wants AARO to prove himself, whereas Lou is quite hopeful that AARO will be able to turn a new page under new leadership, and most importantly, that Lou is aware of Dr. Jon Kosloski being associates with or former friends of someone that he knows, and that's very interesting. So, who potentially is this individual that Lou knows that is an associate with or friends with Dr. Jon Kosloski? So that's a good segue into, I'll just jump open X. So I'll pull up my X account. Again, everyone's favorite villain, Stephen Greenstreet. But to his credit, he was able to put out some information. Jay Stratton says new AARO director was part of the UAP task force. Now that's, if for those of you that aren't aware of that, that kind of puts a bit of a smile on your face, knowing that someone that was with the UAPTF is now AARO's lead and is a good friend of Jay. So new comment from Jon Kirkpatrick from 2018-2021. Jay Stratton was the head of the Pentagon's UFO task force. The mission of the UAPTF was to detect, analyze, and catalog unidentified craft over American airspace. And then classic Greenstreet, Stratton put ghost hunters, psychic mediums, and other paranormal personalities onto his UAPTF. This Scooby-Doo team of Ghostbusters subsequently missed incursions of foreign spycraft over America because they were instead looking for alien UFOs. In 2021, the Pentagon replaced Stratton as head of the UAPTF after internal complaints said he was a crazy nut job. The complaints claimed Stratton during Pentagon briefings would talk about the ghosts haunting his house and the werewolf stalking his backyard. Trying to obviously, trying to throw some stigma and ridicule on the whole conversation and pour cold water over Stratton altogether. After Stratton was ousted, the Pentagon subsequently discovered that many of the objects Stratton had categorized as UFOs were actually Chinese spycraft. In 2022, the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office was created. AARO was mandated by Congress to, in part, look into the wild claims made by a group of government UFO activists, which included Stratton regarding crashed alien spaceships and alien bodies. Jon Kirkpatrick, the director of AARO, ultimately found no evidence of aliens or non-human intelligence. Before retiring, Kirkpatrick released a detailed report which debunked all claims of extraterrestrial UFOs. This report made UFO believers angry and they cried cover up. Kirkpatrick's replacement, Jon Kosloski, was put in charge of AARO on 26th of August, 2024. Jay Stratton claims Kosloski is a good friend who is part of the UAPTF. Stratton hopes Kosloski can carry on my legacy. Behind the scenes, I can report that UFO believers are happy and relieved with Kosloski's assignment to AARO. When asked for his thoughts on Jon Kosloski, Jon Kirkpatrick tells me, I've never heard of him nor ever worked with him. My inquiry to the Pentagon about Kosloski's involvement in the UAPTF went unanswered at the time of this post. I will provide any statements I receive in the future. And he did. He received an update from the NSA, National Security Agency. Dr. Kosloski was part of a small NSA team that provided technical advice on optical and radio frequency technology to the UAPTF. And so while I kind of ignore a lot of the ghosts, goblins, and stigma riddled comments that Greenstreet likes to put in his posts, I did found it very encouraging to learn that Jay Stratton and Kosloski are acquaintances, former associates, former colleagues, and good friends. The good news is I got a text a few weeks ago from a good friend of mine who is part of the UAP task force, Jon Kosloski, and he said, I just got the AARO job. He's good, he's trustworthy, and hopefully he can carry on my legacy. That is something to be optimistic about. And, Jay Stratton, the equivalent of a 2-star general. We know that David Grusch as GS-15, equivalent of a full-bird colonel. So the highest ranking military official, or DOD official being Jay Stratton, coming out and endorsing Jon Kosloski, I think is significant. Now, a lot of people were pretty hopeful about Sean Kirkpatrick, and he let us down, deflated quicker than one of Mick West's debunked balloons, but very, very optimistic that we might see some interesting things from Jon Kosloski. So it's very much a watch this space on Kosloski. So that kind of brings us to our poll, and we're getting to the middle part of the show. Hopefully we'll finish well before the 3-hour mark, but wanted to just have a look at the poll results. So let's end the poll. Again, the title of this episode this evening was, Will David Grusch meet with the new AARO Director? And the options: Grusch should and would if he could. Got 30% of the vote. Dude, it's AARO. Got 26% of the vote. Grusch ain't in no rush. Got 26% of the vote. And no way, no how got 15%. So if Grusch can, if he should, he would if he could. So people confident that, if Grusch can get the assurances he needs to satisfy his concerns that he had with AARO under Kirkpatrick's leadership, if he can get those assurances from Kosloski, and it will hopefully add some credibility that Jay Stratton has endorsed him and has a friendship with him. I think that all works in our favor, knowing that David Grusch could potentially sit down with the new AARO Director and reveal what he knows. Because at the moment, it really doesn't sound like anyone has heard everything that David Grusch knows. The intelligence committees certainly didn't hear everything. The ICIGs probably didn't get all of the information. So if Grusch is in a position where he can sit down with Kosloski in a skiff and reveal everything that he knows, then I would say AARO has a bunch of new leads that it can follow up on, including upwards of those other 37 of the 40 witnesses that Grusch believes did not meet with AARO. So maybe some things to be hopeful for in the coming months and year ahead. So on that note, let's we're at the halfway point. Like, share, and subscribe, folks, if you're interested to support the show and watch it grow. Let's now segue into a few other things that have been happening. Before we do, I do want to acknowledge some folks in the chat, and being as blind as a badger as I am, I'm going to have to consult the goggles here. So I do want to just go through a couple of comments that folks have submitted throughout the course of the discussion, which is really not a discussion, me just yapping away. So let's have a look at Leathers 2969 Grant. I was just in a space with Senator Rennick and asked him the UAP question, and he basically laughed it off. Rennick, is that Australian or US? I'm not too sure, but it's unfortunate to hear if someone is unfortunately all too common for folks in Australian government to laugh off the topic. Let's have a look at some of the other comments that have come through. Zane Michael, Dave Grusch and Sarah Gam worked at UAPTF. Didn't Lou say there were only 2 people working there, so both of them have come forward? Yeah, so Grusch, I believe, had a co-lead at NGA. So I don't know. I don't believe, based on what she mentioned in her interview with Matt Ford, that she was the co-lead. So maybe she was the third. I really don't know, but it sounds like there were a couple of folks over at the NGA that were supporting the work of AARO. Jimmy's comments, Green Street has reported that Jay Stratton has stated that Kosloski was a member of the UAPTF. This may suggest a more favorable fellow to investigate UAP and their history. Couldn't agree with you more, Jimmy, and that's what we were getting at there. Let's have a look at some of the other comments that have come through. Ducati Girl, hi all, new here but love have a keen interest in this general subject, so we'll sub. Many thanks. Good to see you with us, and thank you for subscribing to the channel. Rob Van Der Veen at interview on the Good Trouble show with Sarah that worked at it was actually NGA, was very interesting. She outright said that high res, was it NRO she worked with as well? Or maybe did work with, I can't recall. But to your point, she outright said the high res images and videos that exist are very unambiguously NHI. I found those comments from Sarah Gam to be very fascinating as well. And it would be good to see if there's anyone that she wants people, obviously, that with the UATF to come forward and be able to. It'd be great if if others could corroborate that. And what I found interesting in that interview with Sarah Gam is she talked about this R space, this collaborative space, like a chat room, where it started with about 20 people in this chat room that was UAPTF centric, and then it grew exponentially to over 2,000 members of this chat room. And it kind of brought back memories for me about what Jason Sands said, that he initially said he worked for the UAPTF, which he retracted pretty quickly, but he talked about how he's involved in this UAP Task Force Forum. So is that the same thing, this R-Space chat room that Sarah was a part of? Interesting. Gary Voorhees, I truly hope the new head of AARO will at least not lie under Kirkpatrick. I know he lied. He was not active or transparent and made his whole organization that felt more like Blue Book 2.0 and yet another gatekeeper and nothing of any real substance. Yeah, and he never wanted the job. He was ordered to take the job. You can just see from his body language and the way that he carries himself in all of the interviews that he's done that he really just not interested. Very grumpy, real grumpy bum who really didn't want to be doing that as his last assignment, methinks. And again, welcome, Akashi Chris. Thanks for joining. Gary goes on to say, it would seem everyone has the same story. We gave AARO everything, and they did absolutely nothing under Kirkpatrick. If he does not like the blame, then he needs to understand that is the burden of the crown. Fair call. Fair call. I think this is for. This is from Akashi Chris Mindfork to Gary. Are you going to interview Elizondo or Mellon? Would love to see you chatting with Mellon. So it would be interesting to see who you're sitting down with in the not too distant future, Gary, on your new podcast, Space Oddity. So best of luck and success with that too, by the way. Ducati Girl, I think Grusch is very weary because he stepped up. Shane Woods, welcome, my friend, our newest Patreon member. Good to see you. This was a good interview, interesting in the proposed hearing in September, October, and seeking testimony from AARO leadership. And we'll talk more about that as we go through. Gary with Space Odyssey, it would seem everyone has the same story. We gave AARO everything and did absolutely nothing under Kirkpatrick. If he does not like the blame, then he needs to understand he was in charge. Yep, the buck stops with the guy at the top. And, if you hear what Ross has said time and time again, that there were even people within AARO that weren't comfortable with AARO's direction under Kirkpatrick's leadership. Jimmy, it was very interesting watching the Good Trouble Show episodes. Seems like someone who knows some stuff. Sarah Gam, I found her to be an incredibly intelligent and very bubbly girl. Irrespective of what you believe about her passions outside of her job, her psychic work, her psi capabilities, and that put that aside. And I think she said to Matt that she'd be prepared to have a conversation with her spiritual beliefs in another interview, but putting all of that aside, I think she was very, very, very well spoken, very intelligent, and I was very interested to hear what she had to say. En secreto one. Ross Coulthart has said recently he believes the new head of AARO can be trusted as he has a lot of historic backing with the diehard ufologist. Time will tell, I suppose. Keep up good work, Grant. Thank you so much for your kind words there. I appreciate it. And thank you, as always, Akashi, Chris. I think we're pretty much all at the comments now. Maybe just pull up this one. AARO is told what they can and cannot do. It's a Pentagon counterintelligence filter, exactly like what the USAF Project Blue Book did back in the day. Fundamentally, nothing is going to change. And Jeremy Corbell certainly seems to echo your sentiments there. Nothing short of complete transparency will make my opinion of AARO better. I agree. What's so frustrating with AARO, and John Greenwald Jr. has echoed this time and time again, all of the case files that, and not just John, but myself and others have gone through FOIA, they're all rejected, they're all refused due to FOIA exemption B7, which is law enforcement activities. Every single case that AARO has, are they all being, is there all some law enforcement investigation in place? I just don't buy that. And there is so many other FOIA requests that have been knocked back due to this B7, this law enforcement exemption, which is just a piss weak excuse. Mindful, a couple of times this week, I wondered if this is disclosure as much as we would get, would anyone believe it when it happens? We want something that then we can't handle it. Interesting perspective. Telekinetic, great to see you, my friend as well, YouTube member. AARO need to share their definitions and criteria, and the data is Nimitz radar, redacted, Carl Wolf, and NASA films, plates, Robert Hastings, 1964 film reel, dummy warhead of the, is that the Bob Jacobs film, I think, that Lou said he has actually seen on his interview with, was it Vinny in Disclosure Team? I think he said, and many more cases. Ducati girl, it will be a slow rollout, if at all, so I wouldn't expect to know whether AARO is legit for a long time. Time is going to tell, sadly, and this new guy's just getting spun up, so I think he's probably a little bit behind the 8 ball in terms of he has to be brought up to speed very, very quickly. Mark Kyle, good to see you, my friend. Once bitten, twice shy. That's the issue with AARO. Space Odyssey. Unfortunately, Australia is on my list of governments not be trusted based off their attacks on free speech on X. Yes, a lot of things happening in Australia that people aren't fans of with the government at the moment. I being one of them. Telekinetic. Congress hearing should subpoena all AARO testimonies so AARO can be held accountable. Public transparency, understood it would need to be coordinated legally. I wonder if that's an avenue. I know that House Oversight Committee has been wanting to get a Senate Select Committee on UAP for some time with subpoena authority. So that, I think, would certainly be a game changer, being able to compel witnesses, hostile witnesses, to testify. Leather 2969, Rennick is now an independent, formerly LNP, unfortunately, because he said sounds like something said on Joe Rogan. What a shame. So, Australian senator, obviously poo-pooing the subject, not interested. And what's so frustrating for so many of us as Aussies is there's only one Australian senator. We know Senator Peter Whish-Wilson's of the Greens Party. He's the only senator that has taken this topic seriously in an Australian context and asked questions in Parliament. So hopefully that will change in the not-too-distant future. I kind of feel like we need this big paradigm shift, and if there are some new hearings that get some pretty powerful testimony, maybe that will will shift the needle for folks in government in Australia to take it seriously. Anyone that laughs off this topic are fools, stuck in their own bubble, and are not worth my time. Completely agree with you, Gary. It's such a shame that is so true of still the mainstream media in Australia. You got the breakfast shows here like Sunrise and the Today Show and the Project. They just ridicule the shit out of the topic, and you still get the X-Files themes being played at the front of every segment. They're just taking the piss out of the topic. It's just so frustrating. But I have been surprised with how many people that I've met just over the course of the last couple of years that either have an interest on this topic or even don't, and they're quite willing to strike up a conversation with you and have a genuine conversation on the UAP topic, not coming at it from, oh, you're wearing a tinfoil hat. So certainly a changing of the guard in I think people are a lot more comfortable to have the conversation. Bushy Bardo, Kosloski went to see a San Bernardino where I grew up and where the fires are raging at the moment. Yes, not very good where those rages are at the moment. So stay safe for folks that are in parts of California that are being ravaged by fires. I wonder how he will turn out particularly. Totally agree. Well, that's pretty much all of the comments that have come through, folks. Yes, Bushy Bardo, Keith Basterfield just got 139 pages on a FOIA document from 2021. It was Kirkpatrick, AARO's efforts to meet with all of the commands to get GENE admin reporting. It's interesting. It's an interesting email. And I think Douglas Dean Johnson talks about, he was the one that got this significant FOIA release on the mandatory reporting across all of these commands, and he had some comments supporting the latest. Basterfield was a different release. No, I'm thinking of another release. Yes, I don't think Keith Basterfield has ever released the documents that he's received as of yet. So it'll be interesting to see what his analysis is on those documents and when he releases them. There was another FOIA release only earlier this week, which was interesting that Douglas Dean Johnson weighed in on. Leather 2969, Grant, do you realize you and John are the only people doing the real work in this topic? In my opinion, more than the journalist covering it. Don't ever give up. Thank you for your vote of confidence, my friend, and your kind words. Yes, FOIA is certainly an avenue that can reveal breadcrumbs. Never a full picture, but certainly, records that we can receive. We can exercise our right to information, receive records from the government that give us just a tiny snapshot of what might be going on behind the scenes. So thank you for your kind words there. Jimmy, there will be a Senate UAP hearing before the end of this month, and the new AARO director should be present, says Senator Gillibrand. We'll talk about that in just a moment. And yes, I agree. In Australia, the project on Channel 10 is the antithesis of journalism. They just take the piss out of the topic completely. So we're up to date with all the comments there, folks. Thank you for your... I'm really impressed with just how engaged you guys are in throwing questions and comments in the chat. It really makes me... it pleases me that so many of you are keen to... opine throughout the course of the show. So let's now segue, and we're going to talk about the book that everyone's talking about, Imminent, Luis Elizondo's book, his memoir that came out recently. I still haven't received my hard copy, so I did download the audiobook on Audible and listen to it, not as fast as Jimmy did, but I did listen to it, and I did find it, the reason why I enjoyed listening to the audiobook, and I would encourage you to either buy the book or the audiobook if you listen to read or hear what Lou has to say. I found it to be very interesting. I have included a link in the show notes below if you do want to consider purchasing it. I found the audiobook to be particularly interesting because you could hear from Lou directly, and I suspect the way that he intended the written word to come across. Because when you're reading lines on a page, you can't truly get a sense as to how the written word was intended, because you can't. And that's why it's so troubling. It's so hard on social media like X to kind of appreciate context, because you don't have people's inflections, you don't have their tone, you don't have their speed or how loud they are, how vocal they are when they say something. And you can pick all of that up. You can't pick that up in the written word. And that's why I think so many people are rubbed the wrong way in a tweet. But you can, I believe, get from Lou how he intended his words to come across. And yes, I would certainly agree with you, Akashi Chris Mindfork, there so much more personal, more context. If only I could read. I hope you were being sarcastic there. But that is where the audiobook can come into play. So let's talk about the audiobook. Now, this may not be a popular review. I largely enjoyed the audiobook. Particularly, I found the latter chapters of the audiobook to be quite interesting in the years that Lou resigned from the Pentagon, leading up until really ODNI's preliminary assessment that was released on the June 25th, 2021. That was just, all of that new context was really interesting. There were some things that I kind of raised my eyebrows about and was a little bit puzzled and even concerned at. And unfortunately, this chapter 6 about Lou's encounter with the orbs was one of them. Not so much for what he recounted, but the decision that Lou made pertaining to these encounters. So let's get into it. So I'm obviously not going to play clips from the audiobook because one is copyrighted and I want to respect Lou as the author. I would encourage you to buy it if you're interested to hear it. But Lou was on, if I just get my monitor working here, Lou was recently on Theories of Everything with Kurt Jaimungal, and he talked at length about his encounter with the green orbs in his private residence over a number of years. So I'm going to play you this clip because I think it really, unfortunately, the chapter in Lou's book, or even the audio book on his encounter, his experience with the orbs, it only goes for about 10 minutes or so. So there really wasn't a lot of time that was given to his experience. So I want to play this clip for you because Lou goes into quite a bit of detail about his experience. So let me play this clip for you.
About one of the most fascinating chapters in your book, the one about orbs. Why don't you give the story about the orbs? Why don't you bring the audience up to speed, please? And by the way, this is in the book named Imminent.
Yeah, so let me first preface. My family and I, to include a couple neighbors, experienced something very odd over the course of a period of time while I was associated with the ATIP program. And there were these diffuse green, luminous balls of light with no hard edge. Think of like a neon sign, how it kind of glows. This was the size, anywhere between the size of a volleyball to the size of a little baseball. And they were seen not only by me, and I wouldn't have said anything if I wasn't one to see them, but my wife and my children saw these luminous balls float down the hallway, in some cases, of our home and pass right through a wall or through a door. Now, the only congruency I can say definitively is that when we had experienced these balls of light, whatever they were, it was during a time that I was involved in the ATIP program. And it turns out other individuals who were also involved in that program also experienced similar encounters. That's their story to tell, not mine. But definitively, we had that encounter since going back to like 2010, very early on. Now, let me preface this. Could have been ball lightning. Sure. Could there be an electrical glitch and wiring problem in my house that was creating some sort of St. Elmo's fire effect? Sure. Could it have been some sort of plasma energy because there was a storm 20 miles away that did something with the atmosphere, and now because of the electrical conduit in my house, ball lightning was experienced and static charge? I don't know. It is possible. Absolutely. I can only relay to you what actually occurred and whether or not there was a connection between that and the UAP phenomenon. Some people say yes. Some people say definitively yes, there's a connection there. We don't know what they are. Maybe they're drones. Maybe there's some sort of unmanned vehicle, surveillance vehicle, ISR type capability to monitor things. I couldn't tell you. I just know it did not seem to be technological. And then when you talk to other people, like indigenous people, they ascribe that to being spirits, right? It has nothing to do with UAP. It actually has to do with spirits and ancestors coming to visit you. And then you talk to some other folks that have a different explanation for it. You talk to scientists, they say, oh, it's just ball lightning. But it was very strange. And so I decided to put it in the book because I don't know what it means, but I wanted to be transparent and share that with the reader.
So pretty comprehensive, telling of his account there. I mean, that certainly sounds like unidentified anomalous phenomena to me, even though you've rattled off all of those prosaic explanations that it could be. Certainly sounds like what, would fit the bucket for unidentified anomalous phenomena. So Lou went on to expand on his comments in there's another clip where he talks about the frequency of these encounters, these observations of these green orbs, these green diffuse balls of light.
When would you see it? Would it once per week on average, once a month?
No, once every couple weeks. Once every 2 to 3
From
weeks.
2010?
Oh, all the way through. Oh, no, all the way till probably 2015, 2016. So it's only really, it would kind of, there'd be moments where you'd have increased frequency, and then maybe for a month or two, you wouldn't see it. And then all of a sudden, 4 days in a row, you'd see it, and then it just would be gone.
So episodic, repeated observations over the course of 5 to 6 years. Holy moly. While he was at ATIP, colleagues of his that were also associated with ATIP and ORSAP also experienced similar phenomena. His wife, Jennifer, and his kids also observed it. And they observed it do some pretty strange things, disappear through a wall. So this is where it kind of gets a little bit, this is where I have issue with the account. Not so much what Lou said had happened, but the decision that he made not to do anything about it. So let me show you another clip from that interview with Kurt Jaimungal. And this is now Lou talking about exactly that.
Set up cameras?
So no, we didn't have cameras inside the house. We had cell phones, but back in 2010, I was using a BlackBerry, a government issued BlackBerry, where we did not have cameras. The cameras were disabled. So I and also we couldn't predict the frequency. It wasn't like I had a camera next to me all the time. It's like when you're sitting down and watching a TV show with a family, all of a sudden, whoop, there it goes.
I just mean home set up cameras in the corner, monitoring a room or the outside.
No, we did not. We didn't even have cameras externally. We had an alarm system, but we did not have cameras set up in the house.
This is where did no one have a camera phone in the house? I mean, this is 2010. Phones were pretty advanced back then. Did your wife Jennifer not have an iPhone, a camera phone? I mean, how did you guys communicate? I mean, I understand you had a government issued BlackBerry and it disabled the camera, but did your wife not have a phone? Did your kids not have a camera phone? I just find it, I don't find that argument very compelling, because if I've got an iPhone and I know if I saw something anomalous float down the hallway of my house. I may not do anything about it the first time, but if my wife and my kids see it, you can bet your ass the next time I'm sitting in my living room and I've seen it more than once, I'm going to have my iPhone next to me to see if I can kind of capture it. Or I have a number of AARO motion sensor cameras in my house. You bet your bottom dollar I'm going to set those up as well. So I find it, even in 2010, you had very early iterations of IP cameras that could do CCTV internally and externally of the house. And, you had security installed external to the house, but you didn't have any video cameras. But weren't you on Al-Qaeda's hit list? Wouldn't you think you would have some better form of security than just security alarms? Wouldn't you want to have CCTV cameras external of your residence if what you say is true, that you're really on a hit list from Al-Qaeda? I just find it bizarre that you had an experience repeatedly over the course of 5 to 6 years, and you still made a deliberate decision not to do anything about it and not to capture any data. And I'll talk more about why that kind of mind boggles me. But again, remember, 2010, we're not talking about, let me show on screen here. We're not talking about, where am I? There we go. Sorry, I've lost my mouse, folks. I need to pull it back into view. Because we're not talking about technology that's the old rotary phone. I mean, on the 24th of June of 2010, Apple released the iPhone 4, and its front-facing camera was 5 megapixels, and that's not bad. You're going to get some decent photography with that camera. And no one had a camera phone from 2010 over the course of 5 to 6 years, all the way up to 2016. The cameras got significantly better over the course of that time. So, and even in the book, Imminent, you and in the audiobook, you mentioned that in one instance, one of the green orbs was seen floating outside your house, and that your neighbor actually saw it as well. So if that had happened, wouldn't that be enough of an impetus for you to consider getting some CCTV cameras external to the house if it had occurred outside? I don't know. It really perplexes me that you'd seen something repeatedly over such a significant range of time, and you chose not to capture any data. And so let's play another clip where Lou talks about this in a little bit more detail.
A desire to set up a bunch of cameras because you never knew where it was going to appear. I could put 10 cameras in the hallway. Go ahead.
It didn't occur to you to set up cameras, and then you said no. It just never occurred to you, the thought.
No, because it wasn't alarming to us. It was curious. We were curious about it, but you didn't know where it was going to appear, right? Sometime in a hallway, sometimes in the kitchen. I mean, I can't put 1,000 cameras around the house and hope that I'm going to, have every single one of them on all the time, hope to capture something. It wasn't that big of a deal to us. It was just, it's curious.
You don't need 1,000 cameras. You need one iPhone to capture some photographic evidence. I mean, wouldn't that compel you to go out maybe to Radio Shack when they're around, or go to the Good Guys and pick up a relatively low cost IP camera that you could install internally? They don't cost a lot back in 2010. I mean, the quality of the footage was pretty crappy, but you could still get some decent security surveillance footage captured internally and externally. Again, the whole issue I have around the deliberate decision not to capture any data and do anything about it is what you just said there in that clip is not how you positioned it in the book. In the book, you referenced specifically colleagues at ATIP and ORSAP that had also had similar experiences, and that some, and this is in the book and the audiobook, and that some had even experienced harmful physiological effects, right? And you even talk about how you were aware of the blue orbs are the nasty ones. And, we that follow this topic are well versed know that blue orbs have been talked about before. Colm Kelleher talked about the blue orbs, I think, on an episode with Kurt Joe Munkle on Theories of Everything, where an account that ORSAP investigated, where a blue orb floated through the passenger car of the car window of a woman while she was driving with a family member or a friend, and reported that blue orb entered, penetrated her body, and resulted in severe illness, including a rare form of cancer. So I'm just completely perplexed by the decision not to capture any data. And why specifically I'm perplexed that you, Lou Elizondo, chose not to capture any data of unidentified anomalous phenomena that you had experienced over the course of 5 to 6 years is for this very reason. And I'll show you this next clip. This was Lou Elizondo when he was featured in 60 Minutes a couple of years ago.
ATIP was quite simple. It was to collect and analyze information involving anomalous aerial vehicles. What I guess in the vernacular you call them UFOs. We call them UAPs.
You know how this sounds. It sounds nutty, wacky.
Look, Bill, I'm not telling you that it doesn't sound wacky. What I'm telling you is real. The question is, what is it? What are its intentions? What are its capabilities?
So this is where I really have to, be critical of you, Lou, I'm afraid, because it was quite literally your job at ATIP, based on what you just said, to collect data and information on UAP and analyze it in an effort to ascertain intent and capabilities. And time again, we've heard you on podcasts talk about threats in the context of capabilities and intent. So I would push back respectfully and say that while you may not have known what the intent of those green orbs were that you and your family encountered on multiple occasions over the course of 5 to 6 years, you sure as hell knew what the capabilities were, because you just gave us a very detailed and comprehensive description of what the green orbs looked like, how they moved. They disappeared through a wall in your house because you observed them repeatedly. And again, if it passes through a wall and disappears, that's anomalous activity. Wouldn't you want to? The whole reason mandatory UAP reporting was introduced for military aviators and folks in the defense, the services, was to help assess and mitigate the potential threats UAP pose, national security threats and safety of flight risks. And Lou, you've said time and time again, we may not know what their intent is, but we have observed their capabilities. We know about the 5 observables, right? That you've talked about time and time again. In fact, there are 6 observables, if you include physiological effects, of which you've indicated in your book and audio book that some of your colleagues that were associated with the ATIP and the ORSAP program, suffered some pretty harmful physiological effects. The 6th observable. So what's more complexing to me is that these encounters occurred during your tenure at ATIP over a course of 5 to 6 years, and you deliberately chose not to capture data in or outside of the house. Again, when you knew other members of ORSAP that were associated with ORSAP and ATIP had experienced something similar. And again, according to your book, some experienced harmful negative physiological effects. How do you reconcile that? Someone make that make sense for me, because I don't understand it. You are the director of the Pentagon's UFO program, and you're trying to understand the extent and the nature of UAP, identify intent and capabilities, and yet you're not doing that in your own personal life when you're encountering unidentified anomalous phenomena. Now, this is an artistic rendition, obviously, but I know if I was in my house and I'd seen green orbs for a number of years, just the curious person that I am, you can bet your ass I'd be getting my phone out. I'd be getting my 6 AARO motion sensor cameras out, positioning them within the house to try and get some photographic evidence. And if I knew that colleagues of mine were experiencing something similar, I would want to be able to share information with them and compare stories and compare data. But you didn't do that. Why? You're the director of the Pentagon's UFO program, and you're observing unidentified anomalous phenomena, and you're choosing not to capture any data. I just do not understand. I mean, so what do you guys think? I'm happy to go to the chat, but one point that I would make, I mean, I don't know if I'm being a bit too harsh here, but this is really just something that stood out for me as I really cannot understand your rationale for not wanting to capture data that you and your family had experienced in your prison. And put it this way, let me position this for each of you. Everything that you've just heard from Lou in his interview with Kurt Mungle, Theories of Everything, everything that you've just heard. Now imagine you're hearing that from Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick. What questions would you want to ask? What concerns would you have? I mean, you think there would be a lot of people that are pretty pissed off that Kirkpatrick, that's so quick to push for, data, we want to be able to use the scientific method, and he's having encounters with UAP and he's doing nothing about it. How would people react to Sean Kirkpatrick if he was the one telling that story? I don't know. That's just me. That just was something that was concerning to me when I heard that interview. Not so much when I heard it in the audiobook, because he didn't go into that much detail, but interested to get your thoughts, folks, because that was just me. Again, maybe I'm being a little bit too harsh, but keen to get your thoughts. So let's have a look what you think. So let's start with, where we go. Here we go. Jimmy says, for me, a huge missed opportunity not to capture photos and videos of his orbs experiences, especially that seem to be occurring frequently. I know what I would have done. I completely agree with you, Jimmy, there. It is an absolutely massive missed opportunity. At best, it's a missed opportunity. At worst, it's a massive red flag for this story. I'll be honest with you. That's just my personal take. But it's a missed opportunity, or it is a massive red flag. And everyone will have their own opinion, but that's just my take. Leathers2969, I'm still skeptical of Lou's claims, and I'm curious why he never set up cameras and shit. There you go. I spoke too soon. Shane says, if it was me, I would have moved out quick smart. Yeah, concern of fear of the unknown. You don't know what its intentions are. Zeta Retcat, Lou has gone too far with his book, and all of the wild claims are all over the place. Unfortunately for him, things are coming crashing down, in my opinion. For reference, iPhone 4 was available in 2010. Yep, 5 megapixel camera, pretty decent. I mean, I went to film school in 2011, and then you had the Canon as a DSLR camera. You had the Canon 5D Mark II, gorgeous picture, and I've shot a couple of short films on it. You know, if you're a high-end photographer, you can get some pretty decent quality capture on a DSLR. I just looked up phones from 2010, and there were definitely phones capable of capturing spooky space orbs. 100 Doc, hey Zeta, I completely agree with you. Telekinetic, fair call, Lou not having cameras after a few months or years, surely he'd get some capture tech security cams. Yeah, wouldn't that be the impetus for you to go out and actually get some surveillance equipment? I mean, you got to remember too, Lou's comes from counterintelligence. So you're telling me you couldn't apply your counterintelligence skills to capture any photographic evidence of green orbs that you're seeing repeatedly in your personal residence? I don't know. Ducati girl seems like a poor excuse to me too. Jimmy, the remote viewing portions of Elizondo's book also had me cringing a tad bit. It's a fair call. Shane agrees with it. Ducati girl, his body language suggests deception on that question. And look, there have been folks that have come out recently and indicated that, you know, Eric Davis, his comments in a private Facebook group were leaked, suggesting that Lou embellishes. You know, he embellishes his comments. Telekinetic, maybe he's being honest, and it was a fleeting thing. But then again, it is unusual he didn't act on it. He's in the intelligence game. I mean, look, let's play devil's advocate. Let's assume that Lou did actually collect some data, and he, as some people have suggested to me, you know, maybe he did capture some data and he's not in a position where he is able to reveal it, because if it was included in data as part of his time with ATIP, is there a level of classification around that? I mean, if it's captured in your personal residence, I don't see how that would be the case on a non-government issued smartphone. So I don't know. There's just so many issues that I have with that deliberate decision not to capture any data on unidentified anomalous phenomena. It was quite literally your job to collect information and analyze information on UAP during your time at ATIP to identify intent and capabilities so you could assess the threat that UAP pose. That just is the complete opposite ends of the spectrum there. A visitor, we have Repost. Hi, folks, welcome. Thanks for joining. 100 Doc, great point that was made earlier. Appreciate your comment there. Zeta Red Cat, this whole chat is very based, guys, or maybe is that supposed to be biased? I believe, I'm not too sure. Jimmy supports one of the comments, 1000%. Hoodwink the Ranger. If you've seen data that NHR 100% real, what would a 2-second clip of an orb add to this? Nothing. Plus, you never take your work home. Ask the wife. Well, interesting you say that, Hoodwink, because we have another clip that Lou said in that interview with Theories of Everything with Kurt Jaimungal. And here it is.
Chapter 4 of Imminent, you reference something called the hitchhiker effect. So for those who don't know, what is the hitchhiker effect?
Sure.
And how has it affected you?
Sure. That was a term coined by Jay Stratton, I believe. He was the first one to coin that description, that people that were involved in this portfolio, and I was warned earlier on by Jim Lukaski. He said, this is a sticky portfolio.
A sticky portfolio.
Yeah, sticky portfolio. And I didn't understand, what does that mean, sticky portfolio? And only realizing later they were referring to this hitchhiker effect, that a lot of people that were involved in this effort with the government would experience strange, weird things and phenomena, encounters. As for me, I can't explain it, so I don't really expound on it very much because I don't know what it means.
So again, you are actually subject to the hitchhiker effect. and you decided not to do anything about it to capture data that would further your investigation of unidentified anomalous phenomena. Again, make that make sense for me. I do not understand the decision there. And Lou has said, he's used the words that he was warned that ORSAP ATIP was a sticky portfolio, and he didn't understand what that meant at the time, but over the years he then did. In his book, in his audio book, Lou states that his wife Jennifer asked him, Lou, did you bring something home with you from work? So, you know, and you were warned about the hitchhiker effect when you met with James Lukatsky. James Lukatsky's word, you know, sticky portfolio. When he talked with you about ORSAP and considered you bringing you in, he talked about the hitchhiker effect. So again, knowing that colleagues of yours in ORSAP and ATIP had also experienced similar encounters, and some had suffered physiological effects that were harmful, you chose not to capture any data that might help you better understand the nature and extent and potential threats that UAP, unidentified anomalous phenomena, pose. I mean, look at it this way. ATIP, what does the T and the I stand for? Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program. I'm sorry, but you failed miserably identifying the potential threat that those green orbs posed to you and your family. Now, are you being truthful in that interview with Kurt Jaimungal? If so, then I believe my concerns and my personal opinion is warranted. If you're not being truthful and it is an embellishment, or if you appropriated someone else's story and you're including it to make your book a little sexier, then that's also a concern. So, I mean, I have the greatest of respect for the work that you, Lou, have done. I applaud all of your efforts helping advance the conversation on the UAP topic. We would not be where we are today in men and women in Congress taking this topic seriously without the likes of you, Lou, and Christopher Mellon. But I don't think this just, I have so many issues with this particular this is a big pain point for me. I've got to say it. So again, at best, it's a massive missed opportunity, man. Or at worst, it's a massive red flag, and I don't know which one it is. Anyway, enough about all of that.
Chapter 4 of Imminent.
Whoops. I do want to transition away from Lou. Everyone will have their own personal opinions. Obviously, that is just mine. But I know that some people have had their own thoughts and feelings in the chat. So let's come to wrapping up the show. I've just lost my mouse again. Let me pull this into view. Just want to go through a couple of things at the back end here. We'll move away from the orbs, and let's just walk through a couple of FOIA updates before I just share a couple of comments that you guys have made and questions before we wrap up, because I do want to get this under the 3-hour mark. So let's talk about FOIA. Starting with a document that I was able to secure for release through a FOIA in Australia, a new defense document that echoes AARO's findings in its historical report, volume 1. Whoops. Let me come back here. Oh, come on, mouse. So what I'm going to do, my apologies, folks. I booted myself out. I'm back though. So let me just pull back up my deck there for you. Good old one-man show issues. There we go. And so let's just pull up document. Here it is. Where are we at? There we go. Okay. So on the, when was this? Doesn't tell me the date. On the 20th of June of this year, I requested through Australian Department of Defence, I submitted a FOIA request asking for the May 2024 update of the Senate Estimates Brief, otherwise known as the Chief of Air Force Brief on UAP, and emails pertaining to the generation of that document. Now, the response came back. There was 7 documents identified as matching the scope of the request. So let me show for you the document that I got back. So this is the Senate Estimates Brief, or again, historically is referred to the Chief of Air Force Brief on UAP, because the Chief of Air Force, he's no longer the current Chief of Air Force, but in June of this year, up until July of this year, Air Marshal Robert Chipman was the Chief of Air Force. It's now Stephen Chappell. And Tanya Monroe, who's the Chief Defense Scientist, she co-leads on all things UAP in Australia. Oh, we've got Amy, you got 111. Amy, great to see you, my friend. Thank you for jumping on in. You just finished a show, so feel free to stay for as long as you wish, my friend. But what I wanted to call out for you is some information that's included in this new defense document. And it's basically, background information. So this document, this Chief of Air Force Brief, because Senator Wish Wilson has asked questions of the Chief of Air Force multiple times over the last few years, the Royal Australian Air Force continues to update this document so that if ever the Chief of Air Force is put in the hot seat, is asked questions about UAP in Australian context, they've got a script basically that they can go off. They can follow. They can read this briefing document, which kind of brings them up to speed on the UAP topic since questions were asked in an Australian context dating back to October 2021, with everything that's happened to date. So the background information that the Royal Australian Air Force decided to include in this May-June version of the Senate Estimates Brief, the Chief of Air Force Brief, was as follows. On 8th March 2024, the US DoD delivered to Congress the initial volume of AARO's historical report, a record report that reviewed the records of the US government pertaining to UAP. To date, the AARO has found no verifiable evidence that claims that the US government or private companies have access to or have been reverse engineering extraterrestrial technology. The report also found no evidence that any US government investigations, academic, sponsored research, or official review panel has confirmed that any sighting of UAP represented extraterrestrial technology. All investigative efforts at all levels of classification concluded that most sightings were ordinary objects or phenomena and the result of misidentification. AARO also assessed that the alleged names of alleged hidden reverse engineering programs do not exist and are misidentified authentic national security programs that are not related to extraterrestrial technology, exploitation, or resolve to a de-established program. And you can kind of see then it includes talking points. So again, if the Chief of Air Force is asked a question about UAP, they've got really a script that they can follow. They've got supporting information, all of the questions on notice, written questions that Senator Wish Wilson has asked previously on the topic. There's also reference to media articles and one that was published on the 11th of February this year, the Canberra Times, that I had played a part in getting background information to the journalist Jamison Murphy, published an article titled "After Denials, Defense Admits to UFO Briefing." Because those of you that will remember, in July of last year, the Australian Department of Defence denied that Australia attended AARO's Five Eyes UAP Caucus Working Group meeting. And then in December, less than a year later, they do a 180 backflip and they say, oh, yeah, sorry, guys, we did attend. We didn't check our records enough. So, either some catastrophic incompetence and or some degree of deception being played, and or both. But, Ross Coulthart always likes to say, always assume a screw up before a conspiracy. So it may have just been a monumental screw up on their part. Anyway, the journalist Jamison Murphy reported that defense misled senators, stating that the Department of Defense did not do its homework before responding to Senator Peter Whish-Wilson's question on notice in the May Senate estimates. And I still believe that's completely true. I don't think it did its homework whatsoever. It exercised a complete lack of due diligence on answering a senator's question. And there's obviously some new folks that are included in this document. So nothing really too groundbreaking in this document. If anything, just echoing what we have heard from AARO. But what I found interesting is that earlier, where is it? Was it earlier this year, I secured for release through Australian FOIA the annotated version of this same document, but that was for the October 2023 Senate estimates. And it's pretty much the same document. You can kind of see, all of these redactions here. That's, deliberations and personal information that's being redacted. All of the deliberations, all of the annotations have basically been redacted, unfortunately. So I wasn't able to see what the Chief of Air Force was commenting on. They're all redacted. But what is really interesting in this draft for the October Senate estimates, they decided to include some very comprehensive commentary about David Grusch. Now, they didn't name Grusch in this, but we all know that it's David Grusch. Now, they get this wrong here. On 26 July 2023, the United States Committee for National Security, was actually the House Oversight Committee with a specific focus. The Border and Foreign Affairs held a hearing on UAP implications on national security, public safety, and government transparency. The hearing summarizes that former military intelligence officer turned whistleblower told the House that Congress are being kept in the dark about UAP, alleging some misappropriation of funds to shield multi-decade UAP crash retrieval and reverse engineering program operations from congressional oversight. The witness also alleged that he interviewed officials who had direct knowledge of aircraft with non-human origins and that so-called biologics were recovered from some craft. Members from both parties questioned how Congress should go about investigating the remarkable allegations. All witnesses stated that current reporting systems were inadequate to investigate UAP encounters, and a stigma still exists for pilots and officials who press for more transparency about their experiences. Lawmakers expressed their anger about their inability to retrieve information about UAPs from the military, and intelligence agencies describing a system of overclassification that shields reports of incidents from public view, calling for disclosure. The time has come. Several lawmakers are looking forward to getting some answers in a more confidential setting and assume some legislation will come as a result. Why was all of this information not included in any final versions of this Senate estimates brief? It appears in this draft from October of 2023, but it's not, and this is the annotated version, so it's a draft, but it's not in any of the subsequent versions of this. Why? This is, if you want an accurate timeline, if you want an accurate background, dating from the 14th of September, that's at the time of this draft brief, that was the most recent event, dating all the way back. If you're doing a historical record of everything that's transpired, you talk about, and this is a catastrophic stuff up, Senator M. Kilpatrick. Who the fuck is Senator M. Kilpatrick? He's certainly not the director of AARO, so that's a bit of a blunder that they've made there. But they're including all of this supporting context so that whoever is in the Chief of Air Force that's being asked questions in a Senate estimates, they know the complete history and context. 11th of January, ODNI of 2023, ODNI released its annual report. June of 2022, NASA. June 2021, ODNI's preliminary assessment. Why is all of that information about Grusch, the congressional testimony, why is that completely omitted from the most current version? Again, you got let's look at what they include in the history here. Okay, so we go back to the most recent. March of 2024, so AARO's historical report. Then we have the same consistent information you just saw in that annotated version, the draft, 14th of September. Okay, NASA's independent study team reaches its conclusions and some key points about their findings. 31st of August 2023, AARO produces its website. And then you've got nothing from the 19th of April 2023 to the 31st of August 2023. The congressional hearing that Grusch, Fravor, and Graves attended is completely omitted from the record. Is that too embarrassing for defense representatives to even be aware of? I don't understand why they would restrict that from a document. I mean, if the whole intention is to brief the Chief of Air Force so they can confidently and accurately answer questions, why the hell have they removed an accurate account of what was provided in testimony at the congressional hearing on 26th of July of last year? I don't understand it. Anyway, so that kind of gives you a sense as to the frustrations that I've got from the Australian Department of Defence on this topic and FOIA. So let's now kind of stay on the same vein of FOIA, and I want to take you back to April of last year, where then AARO Director Dr. Jon Kirkpatrick said this at a congressional hearing that was chaired by Senator Gillibrand. And let me just show this for you. Here we go.
And then do you have any plans for public engagement that you want to share now that you think it's important that the public knows what the plan is?
So we have a number of public engagement recommendations according to our strategic plan. All of those have been submitted for approval. They have to be approved by USDINS. We are waiting for approval to go do that.
Okay, I will follow up on that.
So public engagement recommendations according to our strategic plan. What's a strategic plan? Well, it's basically, a roadmap for how you want to achieve your objectives, mission, vision, and so on. So that was in April of last year. So when I heard the word strategic plan, I thought, oh, there's a good opportunity for me to request a copy of AARO's strategic plan. And so I submitted a FOIA request to the Office of the Undersecretary for Defense, OUSDINS. The Office of the Office of the Secretary of Defense, and they farmed it off to OUDS and INS. The request was, basically, I was, giving some context at that subcommittee hearing. Dr. Jon Kirkpatrick said exactly what you just heard. So I kindly request a copy of the AARO strategic plan referenced by Dr. Jon Kirkpatrick at the Subcommittee on Emerging Threats and Capabilities hearing on Wednesday, the 19th of April. What did I get back a couple of days ago? I get back this final response letter on the 26th of August. The Office of the Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence Security, a component of OSD, conducted a search of their record systems based on the information provided in your request. After thorough searches of the electronic records and files of OUDS INS, no records of the kind you described could be identified. Huh? How is that possible that a strategic plan that is referenced in congressional testimony by Dr. Kirkpatrick, there's no record of such a document or equivalent document, because a strategic plan could be a series of documents. So I'm like, what? How's that possible? And all you need to do is jump on AARO's website, and if you go to About AARO, at the very bottom, additional information about AARO. And what do you get when you click on that link? You get this publicly available document, which is pertaining to AARO's mission brief, the U.S. Defense Department and the UAP mission, Jon Kirkpatrick. Now, some folks may have seen this document before, but what is interesting, it obviously talks about AARO's mission, its objectives, its mission, vision, and functions. But then you come to some documents, and what do you have here? Now, it's a bit small on the eyes, so let me see if I can zoom in for you. AARO, Integrated Operations. Integrated Operations Strategy. And then it goes into all of some subcomponents. You have, on the topic of integrated analysis, AARO has an integrated analytic strategy with, again, some sub elements. You have AARO Science and Technology, integrated science and technology strategy with all of its components. You have AARO Strategic Communications, integrated, bottom left, integrated strategic engagement strategy. And what was referenced in the that committee hearing? The word public engagement. So it is, in my eyes, unreasonable to it's unreasonable that a document or number of documents that expounds on each of these key strategies does not exist. So if they're playing cheeky buggers and saying, oh, we can't find a document titled strategic plan, well, that wasn't my request. I asked for a copy of AARO's strategic plan that was referenced by Dr. Jon Kirkpatrick. Now, the strategic plan could be a number of key documents. So I have submitted an appeal, and I've already submitted the appeal, so I don't mind sharing this with you, what my my appeal was. I mean, I don't know if I'm going to have any success, but it's worth a shot. These are my grounds for appeal. A little bit small on the screen, so I'll read it out. Grounds for appeal are as follows. 1, as per the attached transcript of AARO Director Dr. Jon Kirkpatrick's testimony, specific reference is made to AARO's strategic plan. It is therefore reasonable to conclude that a written record of AARO's strategic plan or equivalent documents exists and are subject to the Freedom of Information Act. 2, AARO Director Dr. Jon Kirkpatrick specifically referenced public engagement recommendations in accordance with AARO's strategic plan during his testimony before the Subcommittee on Emerging Threats on Wednesday, 19th of April. It is therefore reasonable to conclude that AARO's public engagement recommendations are formally documented and form part of AARO's strategic plan, specifically for the focus area of American public engagement per AARO's integrated strategic engagement strategy. Refer page 9 of that document you just saw. 3, as per AARO's current mission brief, pages 6 to 9 of what you just saw me show, the following areas of strategic focus are outlined as follows: integrated operations strategy, integrated analytics strategy, integrated science and technology strategy, and integrated strategic engagement strategy. On consideration of the above strategies outlined in AARO's mission brief attached, it is reasonable to conclude that documentation pertaining to and expounding on each strategy exists and forms part of AARO's strategic plan or equivalent documents. So I think there's a reasonable case there to request documents that expound on each of those key strategies. Now, if I get something back, it's likely to be heavily redacted, but we should see some information come back. And if they come back with no documents, I would be incredibly surprised, given that it's AARO's mission brief that's published and publicly available that references a lot of this stuff. So that's just a little bit of an update for you. I wanted to, obviously, as we kind of come to the back end of this episode, what am I doing? I'm going to share. Let's move away from FOIA and talk briefly about what's ahead, and then I'll wrap things up with some of your comments and questions. So as we know, some of you alluded to in the chat, Ryan Sprague said at the front end of this session in the chat that there are some new UAP hearings on the horizon. And at least one of them we know is possibly slated for this month. So the great work that Matt Laszlo does at Ask a Poll, and follow him on X he has a great website. You can support the work that he does. I think one of the very few journalists, if the only one, that's actually getting up to the Capitol every day and asking lawmakers questions on UAP. Obviously covers other topics as well, but he does some really wonderful work, getting some great sound bites from lawmakers as they come out of meetings and as they're getting into lifts and so on. So often gets some really good nuggets and sound bites. So I won't play the clip, obviously, the audio recording, because you can check it yourself on the askapoll.com website. But he was able to secure an exclusive from Senator Kirsten Gillibrand on a public UAP hearing that she has on her schedule for this month. And we know that her intention is to get the new AARO Director, Dr. Jon T. Kosloski, in the hot seat and testify. Now, Luis Elizondo had some comments when he did his interview with Vinnie Adams for Disclosure Team, and I'll play this final clip for you because it gives us a sense as to maybe what we can expect from a new UAP hearing, a Senate hearing chaired by, I would assume, chaired by Senator Kirsten Gillibrand. Here we go.
For the day, Senator Kirsten Gillibrand was asked about any potential hearings this month in September, and she said, yes, it's in my schedule. And you've been instrumental in kind of helping things move along up on Capitol Hill. So are you aware of this upcoming hearing? And if so, what the focus might be?
No, I'm aware of it. I think it's going to probably be, if I had to guess, a new conversation with the new AARO Director. Unfortunately, he hasn't been in the seat long enough to really be spun up on anything. So I don't know. Maybe it's just going to be more pro forma. Will you do this? Will you do that? Will you do this? Yes, 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 and yes. Because, only being in the seat for a couple of weeks, that's really not enough time to give any type of comprehensive briefing on what the organization has learned over the course of several years. It's just not realistic. You got to get people time to get spun up.
Now, if that's a question that Senator Kirsten Gillibrand should ask of Dr. Jon T. Kosloski is then, will you, Dr. Kosloski, commit to addressing each of the concerns that David Grusch put forward in his email dated whatever date it was in November 2023, and provide David Grusch with the assurances that he needs to satisfy him and obviously his legal team that he can sit down with AARO and rest easy knowing that AARO has all of the authorizations and authorities and clearances that it needs to hear the entirety of his classified testimony. I think because we know that Senator Kirsten Gillibrand wanted Grusch to meet with Kirkpatrick, and that never happened. So I think there's an opportunity for Senator Kirsten Gillibrand to really solicit a commitment from Dr. Jon Kosloski to satisfy David Grusch's concerns and allow him to come forward and sit down with AARO. I think that would be a positive. I think that would be a positive thing. So that is what's on the horizon this one. We don't have a date, obviously, for that September hearing, but still, I think if it's only going to be Dr. Kosloski, at least it gives us an opportunity to get to know him, get to hear from him directly. We can kind of scope out what he is going to. Is he going to be a little bit more enthused than Kirkpatrick, who kind of sounded like a waterlogged piece of rotting wood, is the analogy that I would give. So hopefully, he's a little bit more enthused in his mission as AARO Director. So then we had a follow-up announcement exclusive from, again, Matt Loslow at Askapol on the 11th of September. This is only 2 days ago. Exclusive. Representative Anna Paulina Luna confirms that Representative Nancy Mace is set to chair the next House UAP hearing. Luna says more details carrying in House floor speech today. So 2 new UAP hearings on the horizon. That's something to look forward to. Obviously, I want to hear from Dr. Kosloski in the Senate hearing that Gillibrand will chair. But if you've seen Nancy Mace ask some tough questions, I mean, she's a firecracker. When she asked, who was it? The U.S. Secret Service Director Kimberly Cheadle, before she ended up resigning, when she asked questions of the U.S. Secret Service Director in a House hearing, man, she didn't let up. She drilled that individual. Now, it will be very interesting to know who the House wants to invite to testify. Now, unfortunately, we don't know. I don't think that they have the House Oversight Committee. I don't think they have subpoena authority, so they wouldn't be able to compel anyone to come forward. But if we believe what we've heard from Tim Burchett previously, he said they want to get some Pentagon guys in front of the House to answer some hard questions. So it would be very interesting to know, who is going to be on the cards at a future House Oversight Committee hearing. Now, I know my top 6 that I would love to see be invited to testify. Now, we've actually already heard from David Grusch, so we can kind of cross him off the list. If you know the relationship between these folks on screen, some of you will, some of you may not. It would be a very, very interesting hearing to see these guys ask questions and asked to testify. In the top left, you've got Admiral Tom Wilson of the famed Wilson-Davis notes. Beneath him, you've got Eric Davis. Those two kind of at ends. We know Eric Davis has come forward and said that he authored the Wilson-Davis memo, but Admiral Tom Wilson has been completely cagey. He's denied ever attending a meeting in the car park of EG&G with Eric Davis. So if you put him on, if you put him under oath, is he going to testify truthfully? So we can kind of get some truth and finalization from those two as to, well, is the Wilson-Davis memo, was that a real and accurate reflection of that of what transpired in that conversation? We have above David Grusch, who is blacked out. We've got James Lakatsky. He led the ORSAP program. He's said some pretty fascinating things on the Weaponized podcast with Jeremy Corbell and with George Knapp. Top right, you've got Jay Stratton, who we know is coming forward with his own book, memoir or autobiography, which I think will be very, very interesting. And beneath him, you have Luis Elizondo. So, this is just my kind of list. It's not an exhaustive list, There are many other folks that I think would certainly add value to the conversation if they came forward. Keen to get your thoughts, though. So let's kind of have a look at what you guys have posted in the chat. Who you would love to see come forward. I know Jimmy is a fan of he wants to see Timothy Taylor come forward and testify. Very elusive character linked to obviously Chris Bledsoe, Dinah Washpasolka, a very elusive character in the UAP conversation. Let's have a look at actually some of the earlier comments that you submitted, and we're coming to the end, folks, so I promise we'll finish before the 3-hour mark is up. Let's just go back where we get up to. So Jimmy's early comments, Jay Stratton hasn't come out and said anything about Elizondo's book. Neither has Travis Taylor. Interestingly, yes, you're right. There haven't been any comments to support Lou's book. Does that mean anything? I'm not too sure. But it's an interesting observation nonetheless. Melissa, thanks for joining. Do you really think the phenomena would let him film it? I think not. Let me answer you by saying this, Melissa. This is my take. It's always better to try and fail rather than fail because you never tried. That is my take. Fat351, all signs point to yes, the orb wants to be seen. Well, certainly, whatever it was letting Lou, his wife, and his children see it. Luke, too, I'm curious to know if he still has some connection to the sale of that house, or it's a property that he rents, something like that, similar to what happened with the Amityville house controversy. Interesting question. Yeah, have any people that have lived in that house since they moved out experienced similar phenomena, kind of like poltergeist, where it's not it's the house, really classic movie from the 80s. Woo Riders DG, the new Arrowhead will be the same, works for the system, and will do what is told. Certainly, there are folks that share those sentiments that you've got. Mark Hall, that was 14 years ago. Times with iPhones was different then. Again, but you've got the iPhone 4, pretty cool for its time. When you had the old flip phones, and only a few years before that had very crappy camera capabilities. Hoodwink the Ranger, Sean would never speak about this, and it is unlikely to have ever happened to him either. If it was Sean that we're hearing that orb story from, that's a fair point. Rue Riders dig. The deep state has its tentacles in everything, especially ufology. 100 Doc Grant, there is no excuse whatsoever for Luis Elizondo to not recording them. If you watch the rest of that answer, he had 7 different excuses in 90 seconds. Yep, it is a puzzling one. Mark, his daughters would have been pretty young, so they wouldn't have phones then. I don't know. I'm not too sure. Teenagers, one of Lou's daughters recently married, or I think maybe not so recently, but is obviously an adult. So, even if they're teenagers back then, I mean, I've got plenty of friends that have teenagers or know of folks that have teenage kids, and they've all got iPhones. I mean, cripes, my 4-year-old knows how to use my iPad better than I do. So, they're a lot more in tune with technology these days, and they like to use that technology. And think about it this way. What was massive in 2010? Instagram was huge. Instagram was massive. It was, I think, pre-Facebook purchase days. Instagram was one of the most popular apps that you could use, and a lot of people were using it on their iPhone. So who's to say not taking a snap of an orb and you're gramming it, putting it on the gram? Maybe. Ducato, I need to watch more of him to form an opinion on his truthfulness. Remember, there's a book in this. Yeah, I mean, I'm largely still undecided on a lot of the stuff Lou's talked about. This is an issue. This is a concern for me specifically, though, and I know you can be critical of someone's position and their decision and indecision. I'm not critical of Lou as a human being. I'm critical of what he did while he was doing what he was doing, during his tenure at ATIP. If he didn't indeed helm an informal, unofficial program, ATIP. Everyone likes to say, "Oh, ATIP never existed." Well, Green Street might be right there in that, well, maybe it was never a formal program, but maybe it was a very unofficial, informal effort that Lou kind of did in his own spare time. I can buy that more than I can that ATIP was never a formal program. Zeta Retcat, Lou apparently had his own ATIP. Eric Davis has said a lot of things that are confusing about ATIP over time, and his interview with Stephen Greenstreet was one of them. The whole ORSAP ATIP thing is just confusing. I mean, like some put, in the big scheme of things, does it really matter, and should you care? Some people will say no. It doesn't really speak to the core issue and allegations, but I think it's important in the context of history. I want my kids, if they happen to grow up forming an interest in this topic, I want them to be able to look back and get an accurate reflection, an accurate historical record of what transpired. So I think it's important for history, and like John Greenwald says, details do matter, and I believe they do. I didn't understand that base comment earlier on, so it's what the kids say these days. I'm 45, so I'm certainly out of I'm out of the know these days. Melissa, maybe the orbs truly are a different color, and they're waiting to see if others are being visited with certain color orbs. TJ Felony, hi friends, thanks for joining towards the back end of this session. I appreciate you jumping on in. And let's get to some of the other comments. Fat351, Grant, drop Lou a DM and ask him to pop in for a chat. I don't think I'd be able to, because he doesn't follow me, and I think you have to have two-way follow for DM. Anyway, I can't. He's never followed me, which is fine. That's not my reason for being on X, but it would certainly be interesting to get some clarification from Lou on that. My question would be, considering ATIP's mission and that you are the head of a program, you claim to be the head of ATIP, and given what you've talked in the past about threats in the context of capabilities and intent, given the fact that you had colleagues associated with ORSAP and ATIP that also reported physiological effects, harmful, even potentially harmful effects, encountering similar phenomenon orbs. Was it a missed opportunity that you chose not to capture any data? I would love to get his answer on that one. Maybe if you've seen an orb, you would understand. Quite possibly. I have never seen one, so I can only offer my opinion based on. I know I would certainly want to capture. If I'd seen something anomalous more than once, I would certainly want to capture it and share it, open source it, let people have a look at it. And go 111, bum, I should have redirected my audience to you. Very kind for your thoughts of thinking that, but appreciate the comments there on that one. Lou is part of the problem ufology, just like the other big names. He doesn't speak for 2+ years, give or take. Then he comes out left field, now multi-millionaire off of his book. I have no idea what sort of book sales he's doing. I know it's a New York Times bestseller list, which is obviously a big achievement, but I don't know what sort of money people get from book sales. DM me if ever you want to go on during this time, so I can send over the 111 fam. Day is starting here. I appreciate the offer, Amy. Many thanks. I'll certainly do that. And for those of you, yes, go check out Good Morning UFO on YouTube. Alien Girl 111, Amy, does a great show every morning. Usually it's at the very end of my day. So I'm usually starting to fall asleep. Well, I'm usually asleep a couple hours before Amy even goes live. So being a father of two young ones, but puts out some cool stuff to start your day with a cup of joe. So go check out Good Morning UFO. Luke 2, isn't a whistleblower someone who releases confidential top secret information without authorization from the government and not going through DOPSA? This is why I'm skeptical of all these guys. Yeah, so technically David Grusch is a whistleblower in the sense that he submitted a protected, was it a PPD 15? He submitted a protected disclosure, which is a protected whistleblower disclosure document that he completed. So in the technical sense, with the protected disclosure that he made, he is a whistleblower. But I agree, he is, if you're thinking of a whistleblower like God, what's his name? It's completely escaping me. Edward Snowden, then no, I would not put him in that same category. I agree. Whistleblowers used all too lightly in ufology, unfortunately. Telekinetic, that news article, after denials, defense admits to UFO briefing. That was a masterstroke of pro-transparency work. Grant and Jay Murphy, valuable work towards transparency disclosure. Many thanks, Telekinetic. It was great to be able to, Jamison Murphy, the only journalist that has put out now 3 articles that really presses the Australian Department of Defence on its lack of transparency and its inconsistent statements on the topic. So he is doing some great work, and I'm pleased that I've been able to support his efforts along with Ross as well. Let's have a look. Some of in that, Joe, I would say you're right. I don't think they searched properly in that request that I went for AARO's strategic plan. So hopefully now with the supporting information I provided them, hopefully they can come back to me with something. Ruff, welcome on X. Thank you for jumping on in. We have William Runner, misappropriation for investigating Wu. I hate when that happens. My whole inkling is I kind of concur with what George Knapp has to say here. I know that a lot of people say, oh, well, spending taxpayer dollars to investigate Wu and stuff. But, in a curious mind of mine, in the interest of better understanding our place in the world and the universe, isn't it better to investigate the unexplained rather than explain the uninvestigated? That's a quote that I love from George. People think of, people love or hate George. I value the work that he's done in his time as a journalist over many, many years, and that's a quote that's always sat with me from George. Yes, look, to Nancy Mays absolutely destroyed the Secret Service director. So if you get someone that is not answering questions that she's asking, I hope that she gets a little bit the feathers get ruffled and she asks some pressing questions. Puthoff is a source for a lot of these claims through the years, so I would add him to the list of witnesses to testify. Yeah, Hal Puthoff is certainly another one that is worthy of inclusion. Shane, I would have thought the US election would have delayed the hearings. Isn't there supposed to be another whistleblower coming to light around October as well? October surprise. We've heard rumors now for ages that there are other whistleblowers in the waiting that are ready to come forward. Some consider Jason Sands a whistleblower who's kind of come forward and he's going to be profiled, some think, in James Fox's The Program. Now that's scheduled to be released, I believe, in the coming months, and there may be inclusions of new whistleblowers in that documentary. So I'm certainly looking forward to seeing James Fox's new documentary when it comes out. Ducati Girl, I've got a long way to get spun up on some of these characters. I follow Ross Coulthart. Look, Need to Know is a great resource. If you watch Bryce and Ross, they really give you a good rundown of what's been going on, as do a lot of the folks that I've kind of profiled clips from tonight. Andy over at that UFO podcast, Vinny, Disclosure Team, even with Alien Girl 111 with her Morning UFO, Good Morning UFO. She covers a lot of the day-to-day news. Vetted is another one. He covers a lot of the stuff that's happening day to day. So there are certainly some suggestions for you to consider following. Luke 2, I'd like to see someone we've never heard of or seen before who is not under NDA DOPSA who is dropping real facts. Yeah, it would be nice to see someone that is not the assortment of characters that we've heard about for many, many years, of the NIDS era, the ORSAP era, and recently of the ATIP era. Jason Sands, I mean, think of him what you will. He's come forward. He claims to be a whistleblower. That's someone that we'd never heard of before. Are there others that people don't know about or that aren't of the circles that I talked about? It would certainly be refreshing to have someone new. But certainly there are folks within those circles that I would certainly love to see testify before Congress. Where is Grusch's op-ed? That's a good point, Jimmy. We've heard about that, and you had Jesse Michaels saying that he expects it to come out at some point, but why the delay? I wonder why it's been put on the shelf. Hopefully not gathering dust for too long. So yeah, support the good question there, Jimmy. Hey James, thanks for tuning in with some eyeballs, my friend. Good to see some new faces. Luke 2, I like Greenstreet, but I feel like he is coming from a position of growing up in a fundamentalist religious household and sees a common theme with this topic and approaches it with that bias in mind. Yeah, he comes with being part of the Mormon faith for many years growing up. And Alien Girl 111 actually talked about this. Amy talked about this on one of her Good Morning UFO shows before it was called that. I think that's a recent name or branding change. But I think Greenstreet's history with his issues with rejecting his Mormon faith have fueled his desire to chase the dragon and get kind of clarity or ask some key questions in the topic of ufology. I mean, I as a filmmaker myself, I actually really think Greenstreet puts out a lot of great the production value that goes in his content, his videos is really good. I wish I had his editing skills. As a filmmaker, I really envy him on that. I don't agree with his positioning and the arguments that he makes, but he does periodically get some breaking news and exclusives that more information is better than no information. So I just don't necessarily agree with the arguments that he makes or his position, but I respect that he pursues answers to questions that are important to him. And shout out to Jimmy. Where's the op-ed? Yes. Zeta Ret Cat. Greenstreet certainly has his problems, but overall his contributions to the subject is substantial and important. Yeah. The more sunlight that can be shone on this topic on all sides of the aisle, whether you're a skeptic or whether you're a believer, or if you're someone that's sitting on the fence like me. I mean, my mind changes constantly on this topic every day. I think it's valuable to have. I mean, look, even I believe Mick West plays an important role in this community. Again, I don't necessarily agree with his position on a lot of things, but I think he does add some value to the conversation from time to time. So I think the more voices that are in the conversation, irrespective of their position, is important. Yes, I don't necessarily think his the ridicule that he applies to this topic is, I don't think it serves any value. It really is just a reflection of his his disdain for people that for believers and those that have a differing opinion to his. I have a love-hate relationship with Green Street. I don't think you're alone there, my friend Jimmy. I believe Green Street has a hate-love relationship with ufology too, actually. Yes, Pavel does some great content, and I can't pronounce his new podcast, but he's been featured on Vetted a couple times, and he has put out some great content. He was recently presented on Ryan Sprague put out the second annual Anomicon. Fantastic effort by him and Suzanne to kind of get through, was it 28 hours of live streaming, and Pavel put out a presentation. So feel free to check that out on Ryan Sprague's Somewhere in the Skies podcast channel. Let's wrap up, folks. I think we've come now through to all of the comments. I just wanted to give, thank you for taking the time to comment. So last few, Mick West thinks of all of this is complete nonsense, but he's always respectful despite getting hate all the time. I think being a Brit, he's a bit misunderstood in how the Brits can carry on with their humor and demeanor from time to time. But I agree. He has always been very respectful in conversations that I've seen him. I mean, that one that he did with Marik, von Rennenkampff, is a perfect example. He was very respectful. He also had a conversation with Eric Weinstein on Theories of Everything, I think a couple of years back, and that was a respectful conversation as well. Enjoy the stuff about Skinwalker Ranch, or Mick. And last comment that we've come to, NY Tom. Hi from Turkey. I'm 60 years old. I used to follow UFO when I was younger, but after years of seeing the pattern, I pretty much gave up. I do not think we will be seeing anything in my normal lifetime. I hope you are wrong, my friend. I would like to see there to be some form of resolution on this this enigma that's wrapped in a riddle before I shuffle off this mortal coil, and I would like to be able to share that with my children before I shuffle off as well. Joe, I hope you're wrong, NY Tom, but I don't blame you thinking that. Thank you, Luke, too. Thanks for the stream, Grant. Always appreciate your work. Thank you, Jimmy, as well. Always appreciate your support, my friend. And thank you all for taking some time out of your Friday the 13th for this episode of the Unexplained Rundown. Here it is again. I heard it again. Anyway, thanks, guys, for sticking with me. Appreciate all of your comments, and looking forward to seeing you on another episode of the Unexplained Rundown. So take care. Have a wonderful weekend, and look forward to seeing you again soon on another episode. So bye for now, folks.
If you have enjoyed this episode of the Unexplained Rundown, please consider giving it a thumbs up, sharing with your friends, family, colleagues, and social network, as well as subscribing to the channel. And if you'd like to be notified whenever the Unexplained Rundown goes live, premieres, or posts a new video, be sure to ring that cowbell.